Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Special Finance Committee meeting where we will be discussing the Grant and Aid Program. I acknowledge that this meeting is taking place on the traditional territory of the Sianu and South First Nations. The District of Metchosin is committed to reconciliation with Indigenous peoples, and we recognize, honor, and respect the presence of Indigenous peoples past, present, and future. Please be sure to have your cell phones turned off during the meeting. Committee, are there any additions to the agenda? There is one pink.
So moved with the addition.
Thank you. Moved by Mayor Little, seconded by Councillor Epp. All in favor? Carried, thanks. So we'll move on to presentations. We have, appears to be 7 people, 7 different organizations that wish to present this evening. You have 5 minutes each to speak. When you approach the mic, please state your name and the organization you're from. There's a little button, and when it's on, you'll see a red light go on. So the first organization I have on my list is Need to Suicide Prevention, Education and Support, Sandy Hodson. Welcome. Push the button, please. There you are.
There. Okay, can you hear me now? Okay. My name is Sandy Hodson. I'm the operations manager at Need to. Need to is a local nonprofit dedicated to preventing deaths by suicide and breaking the silence and stigma around mental health.
Just move your mic up just a little bit, please.
Yep. Is that better?
Does that work? This handsome?
Oh, okay. Like this? Okay. Do you want me to restart? How did you hear my beginning? Okay. My name is Sandy Hodson. I'm the operations manager at Need to Suicide Prevention, Education and Support. We're a local nonprofit dedicated to preventing deaths by suicide and breaking the silence and stigma around mental health. We do this through our in-school education workshops, our community trainings, and our support group for adults bereaved by suicide. Today we are requesting funding to support our in-school education programs. So we run mindfulness programs in grade 6, and this following year we're going to be introducing an elementary school mindfulness program as well, to introduce students to the basic concepts of mindfulness, to use tools to help with difficult emotions and build resiliency. Then in grade 8 and high school, we introduce our C workshops, which is suicide education and awareness. And so these workshops are all about just normalizing having open conversations about mental health, how to recognize signs of struggle in themselves as well as in their peers and friends, and steps they can take to reach out for support, as well as resources that are available to them both in their school and the broader community. These programs have really shown to increase both the students' confidence in reaching out for support themselves, as well as supporting their friends and peers, as well as increasing the comfort that the teachers have broaching these topics and supporting the students in their school as well. Yeah, so any questions about our programs?
Yeah, no, thank you. Thank you for this. I just wanted to note that the Victoria Family Court and Youth Justice has grants available, and they're up to, actually there's no ceiling. They're typically $5,000, $6,000, $7,000. This would be also a perfect organization for that as well.
Oh, great. Thank you so much for sharing that.
The municipalities contribute, all the municipalities within the CRD contribute to that committee.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Juan Fuca Performing Arts Center Society, David Stocks.
Thank you. This is not my first time appearing before this body. Metchosin has supported us very pleasantly for several years. And this time we are asking for financial support for our workshop, in which we invited all our potential customers, the people who would use the art center, to present ideas to a group of architects And we had a workshop. The keynote speaker was a gentleman with a strong track record in raising funds for such similar art groups. And we had a firm of architects who, to my absolute amazement and delight, were able to pull together from all these different voices. You know, a theater group wants this, a choir wants that, a dance group wants the other. They were able to make a couple of sketches of credible buildings. It was delightful. We're going to present their results in a gala after the summer break, a gala event, which I hope you will attend. And by the way, we are enormously grateful that we have a councillor on the intermunicipal committee who's attempting to, who will, I trust, solve issues such as where should the center be located. We have asked for $300 of support to help recover from the costs of our workshop, or our customers told us what they wanted. Of course, their customers are the individual citizens. So we hope within a reasonable period of time to be having a big construction project, which the chosen citizens and contractors certainly can assist with, and then to have a West Shore home for the arts and make a dramatic reduction in the number of car trips back and forth from the West Shore into Victoria to see shows, live shows, real shows put on by people. Are there any questions?
Committee, any questions? Mr. Stock? Councillor Rapp?
Thank you for coming. I was at that workshop. I couldn't stay for the whole day, but it was there. And it was extremely well attended with a huge range of artsy types from pretty much every endeavor around, and it was good. And so hopefully eventually things will work out, because we certainly need a mid-range or small type theater in the West Shore.
Thank you. Those are very kind words. And it was amazing to see how the architects could have from all these different people to say, well, okay, well, we'll do this and we'll do that. And they made these sketches. It was magic. Thank you for being there.
Councillor Gray?
So maybe I could just ask through the chair, and thank you for the presentation and the notes. So the workshop has already occurred?
The workshop has occurred.
Yeah.
Yes, and there was about 75 people there. Some were insiders, our actual customers, the performers and whatnot, numbered about 60.
And so were you seeking assistance for the workshop that's already happened, or the development of
The workshop has already happened. We have a bit of a hole in our finances, and we're asking for you to shovel a little green stuff into the hole.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Metchosin Equestrian Society, Anna Whiten.
I am not that tall.
Look, you turn it back on. Yep, there. Good. Let's go.
All right. Hello, I'm Anna Whiten. I'm with the Metchosin Equestrian Society. I am representing a society that has over 100 members that are active at this time. A good portion of them are from our community and Souk. We have some members that are participating in our events as far away as Comox now. So it's become quite the active community in the past 2 years at the Metchosin Equestrian Society's arena area. What we are asking for is assistance in putting together temporary stalls. We've already purchased the stalls ourselves as a club at about $2,000. We require assistance in funding or in aid support for the footing and the roof. Right now, we can't actually use the stalls as they are because there's no protection from the elements in that we just have walls. The stalls will be available to the community for our events, but they will also be available for emergency preparedness. So the big lack of resource that we have right now is a capability to house animals in the event of a barn fire, a flood, downed fencing. We need a space that could potentially be used to store animals safely in a manner that is not the arena. The arena is not an emergency preparedness device or capability that we have right now. Putting sheep in it would not keep the sheep in it for long. They will escape, which will just further drain resources from our community in trying to recapture said sheep or whatever. The temporary stalls that we have purchased were designed for horses and to be safely used for horses for weekends or up to a week. It's not a humane way to store animals or to house animals, so we're just using it for emergency preparedness and day use for our events. That's our vision anyways. Why this is important for the emergency preparedness is that we have no capabilities nearby. Luxton Fairgrounds no longer has capabilities for housing. Souk Saddle Club no longer has a facility. The nearest emergency shelter that is publicly available and usable is the Saanich Fairgrounds and Duncan in Cowichan exhibition grounds. So we have nothing nearby. High Point was closed earlier this year. We have nothing close. So it's a bit of a concern. Since we made our grant application, we've also received our bills, or our estimates for the work that was required for the maintenance and repairs on our grandstands. So our finances have enough to just cover that, but we have nothing left to further our community outside of what we have. So we have $10,000 in our bank account, which is going to go right back into the grandstand repairs. And then we have nothing left to add towards furthering the footing or roofs for our temporary shelters that we've already purchased. So that's me. Do you have any questions?
Committee, any questions for Ms. Whiten? Councillor.
I just wondered, how are you planning on anchoring the stalls to the ground?
So they are very heavy. Gravity is going to do a good work of that. They're designed to actually lock together. So it's going to be 6 stalls that are going to be basically held down by the sheer weight of it. Each panel is about 200 pounds. And then when you factor that in to I believe it's 21 panels in total to make the configuration, it's several thousand pounds. It's not going to blow around. They're designed to be put in a field.
Councillor Schuman.
Great. Through you, Councillor Donaldson. Thank you, Ms. Whitten, for the presentation. Quick question, the dimensions of each. So you said panels for 6 stalls, I think. So general dimensions for?
Each stall is 10 feet by 10 feet. And it would be set in a 6-pack, so 3 long and 2 deep. So the footprint itself will be 20 feet by 30 feet. I'm going to be doing another presentation in about a week. Stay tuned, where I'll be presenting our location with the site plan and all the rest of the further details. But we're proposing to put it in between the grandstands and the farmers market area, behind the memorial of benches. So it's in a safe, fairly unused location at this time.
And these would be permanently there, or they're?
The temporary stalls are just that. They can be set up permanently. We would ideally like to have them set up permanently, so if it was an emergency, we don't need to hook up the tarps and whatnot. Our budget right now is based off of a permanent roof, similar to what the farmers market has used, so that there's a visual cohesion, and it's not. The other option would be a tarp roof, and judging by the windstorm that we had pretty much all day today, and pretty much every other day this month, that would be less than ideal, and it would not last for any length of time. We want it to be permanently set up, so if there is an emergency, we don't have to set it up in a rush.
Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Metchosin Preschool Society, Tara Townsend.
Hello, everybody. My name's Tara Townsend, current preschool president. It's a bit of a game of hot potato at times, otherwise kind of gratefully passing it on to the preschool to be the president. Right now, it's a bit of a hot potato, I gotta say. So I'm here tonight to ask for some funds just to help us with our door installation for our egress for the preschool, kind of to connect us more to the community when the children are there, to have like an easier exit and entrance, especially if there's like a quiet event going on next door or an event going on in the gym, just so we can keep the kids safely and quietly in and out. Also just for opportunities, like, we're looking at doing possibly hot dogs for the MACA event, their Festivus, and just kind of having that ability to have people come into our classroom and kind of see that here we are, the kids can come out. It gives us like a bit of extra breathing room for kids having a meltdown in case they need to step out instead of stepping into a hallway. So it really kind of creates a much better suited childcare space. We're also looking at kind of upping we've decided like tuition, what we are is definitely not for everyone. We're not childcare. We're a child enhancement for families that have really decided to put those 0 to 5 years and stay at home and put their time into kids who hopefully will be also involved in the community and contribute. So we kind of have a niche little market there. And so getting our tuition up, we've decided is not really our best kind of viable option, especially with the opening of a childcare center at Hans Helgeson, and hearing the preschool with the ponies even is struggling right now. So we're kind of looking more into what we are, which is a family-based, kind of community-based. In the community, open, kind of people can peek in, people can walk by on their way to pickleball and kind of see, oh, there's the kids, that's what they're doing, check in, have a little conversation with these future members of our community. I'd like to say lots of our core parents that I see later on at Hans Helgeson, on the PAC, involved out there volunteering, have been co-op preschool parents. I'm kind of at the tail end of my preschool career, thankfully. Audrey's going into the 4th class this next year, and that's my youngest. But I see how these families that have gone through are the community builders and are involved and putting their time out. And yeah, I'm hoping the door will continue to involve us in the community. Any questions?
Committee, any questions for Ms. Townsend? Go ahead, Mrs. Councilor.
Yeah, I just wanted to verify, because on your application, I think it was actually from last year, it was for the playground.
Oh, does it say the gravel on the playground?
Yeah.
That's, once again, the really fun part about the preschool is it is this continuance where it's passed on from parent to parent. I'm not sure why it says the gravel. Our gravel does need updating too. I think there was a shift. It was supposed to be shifted to be kind of contributing towards the door. Our gravel.
But it's actually the door that you're...
It's not so much the door. It's for the, we have the additional, because we weren't, the room that we have settled into and added sound baffles and all these enhancements to, it needed updating. Like, so the door was one of those enhancements, but then as soon as we had an architect come in, it was like, oh, we need light and we need an electrical engineer. So instead of having the 10,000 we had estimated for the Miroslav architects to come through, it had doubled, which the preschool we have luckily had received many generous grants from Victoria Foundation and the government, but this, we kind of just got a bit above and beyond with the additional of installing the lighting. So to have an actual electrical person come in and install our like egress lights needs to be done now in the hallway to update that space. So it will be an enhancement to that classroom, which stays in the district's hands forever. But yes.
Sure, thanks.
Councilor Shukin.
So thank you very much for the information. Quick question I might ask our CAO for confirmation on this. Where are we at in terms of approval of the door? Have you received confirmation from the district that this can go ahead?
My understanding was the door was approved. I've kind of clarified that several occasions. My idea was that the door has been approved. You were waiting for the actual architect plans, which are being submitted, I believe, this week. It has been actually a long, drawn-out process now with the architects that we've engaged. The plans should be within this week. I'm kind of juggling. Mike Vandewater is kind of our building committee guy, so he's also a busy guy, so sometimes things, once again, in the telephone tag, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
And thank you, Ms. Townsend, because there's a bit of confusion because we were talking about an entry. We still are, the Village Square project. Things have changed, I think, in terms of the building configuration on the inside, so I was not clear on where we're at in terms of the front entry. So,
Yes, no, my understanding is there's lots of doors. There's doors everywhere. And when you go there, there is doors to the left, there's doors to the front, there's literally doors anywhere. There's not one that specifically goes into the classroom. And the value for the preschool and for that room is having an egress, especially if there's a childcare, anything in there, whether it's a summer camp, anything, preschool using it to have that separate entrance, especially when you have young people involved, hopefully, in what's going to be a fabulous, busy community center at some point, is a huge thing to have it kind of separate so you don't have children. I don't know what children in hallways is, just always a combination of running and skipping, you know what I mean? As long as you get into a long, smooth thing, children tend to,
do what they want to.
do what they want to.
Yeah. Okay.
Is that right? Yeah. Okay.
Thank you very much. Okay, Reimagine West Shore Society, Shannon Carmen.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Shannon Carmen. I am the Vice President of Reimagine West Shore. We are an organization who started a couple of years back, hoping to empower people. People are feeling fairly low about the world in many ways these days, and our idea was instead of just talking about things, we were going to empower people to lead greener lives, learn how to save some money, and build some community whilst doing that. So for the past few years, we've been putting on events like Repair Cafe that happened in Metchosin. We've now done one in Colwood and Langford as well. We put on our second CD Saturday on in Langford, where we had a lot of involvement from Metchosin growers and Gary Fletcher with his bees and all kinds of Metchosin engagement. We just had a sewing workshop, which was the second one over at the old school at MACA just yesterday, which was super well attended. We put on any number of food processing workshops, teaching people canning and learning how to cook from scratch. We've done 2 clothes swaps, community clothes swaps from Metchosin at the old school just before Christmas, which were hugely successful. So trying to encourage people to buy or not buy new or fast fashion and enjoy gently used things. So we are asking for your support. Any amount of money that council gives us, we'll put into general operating for Reimagine. We're completely volunteer run. And we're always open to meet new people, get new ideas, and see new things in the community. Our biggest project right now, I've got a few posters. Repair Cafe coming up, and then I want to just draw your attention to the Tomato Challenge and our Farm to Fork project, because that's the one specifically for this year that we've been working with Councillor Donaldson and the Agricultural Select Committee putting this together. So the tomatoes, we got a bunch of tomato starts from Fuca and Metchosin and have been giving them out for free in the community at the Luxon Fair, at our upcycled show we did with Royal Bay students, where we had over 200 students take part in that, where they were showcasing upcycled art that they created. So we were giving tomato starts out there, just encouraging people to try growing food and see how easy it is, and that could be done on a deck as well as in the garden. So that piece, we've been giving out tomato starts, and then we've put together a farm to fork map. So this is an update on the map that was put up by Metchosin Grown a number of years ago. I want to say like 10 years ago. ish, 12? 2? Really? Oh gosh. So this details farms as well as food producers and places like the Goldstream. My brain has gone blank. No, the food bank. The Goldstream Food Bank. Showing people where they can access food and local food, and not just for folks who have, the money to put towards the higher price point, but also people who just want to be able to access just general food security. So this map is its first printing. It will no doubt evolve as we get more feedback. We've had some feedback just that we could put things into categories, right? Like have farm categories and then shop categories and things like that. So we're always open to suggestions and we're always evolving. So that's us.
Committee, any comments or questions for Ms. Carvin? Councillor Shukin.
Just to compliment, Reimagine's done great work over the last little while, and you see the posters on a regular basis, and yeah, it's a great work with, all the work you're doing.
Thank you. We have a gifted graphic artist who does our stuff, the retro, you can do it kind of vibe.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, so South Island Farmers Institute, Katie Underwood.
Hi everyone, can you hear me okay?
Yes,
Probably a bit too loud. I'm delighted to be back here in Metchosin Council. It's a delight to see you all once again. I'm here from the South Island Farmers Institute. We are a group of food floral fiber producers who are producing on South Vancouver Island. We welcome anyone from a small leasing farmer like myself to Sea Bluff Farm, who's here in Metchosin, Terry and Jenny Mitchell. We just really love being able to provide education to our farming community. And we've been in operation for about 2 years now, and we've had roughly, I believe, 26 community events, which include everything from the really big Farmer to Farmer, which is a week-long conference, to our innovation series, which is summer field trips, a business series where we get to crunch numbers, and my personal favorite, the Sustainer series, where we welcome a sustaining farmer that's been farming in community, some for generations, some for decades, and they share their successes, their challenges, and their family history. And so because we are a group of volunteers and we have relatively low operating costs, we're just really, really blessed to be able to raise up our local community. We can give honorariums to those that are educating our community. And so, for example, in September, Robin's going to be teaching us a workshop at Sea Bluff, all about just winter farming and getting us all ready for that. It's just a delight. So we feel so grateful to have the support of Metchosin, and I believe we will be presenting to you in a couple weeks also, just really getting down to the nitty-gritty of our programming. But since our impetus meeting that we had in April of 2023, we've grown to about 80 members, and we have food producers, big, small, like I mentioned before. We also have community organizations that are also welcome to join us. They get to participate in the educational opportunities we have. We don't cater our education to those community members, but we just really want them to be able to see what our food producers are needing to learn. And so that's been really, really quite beautiful, because there's been a lot of producers who have taken upon themselves to work collaboratively with those organizations if they see that that fits their business model. So it's been lovely for me being able to see that, being able to help organize the education that our community really has been missing since 2018, when the last Farmer to Farmer was. So we just really appreciate Metchosin's rich agricultural history. We love that you guys have so many fantastic producers here. It's just so overwhelming and fantastic. So yeah, thank you. And I'm happy to answer any questions. Probably missed a bunch of stuff.
Any questions for Ms. Underwood committee? I don't have any questions, but I do want to commend you for the work that you have done across the region and being a voice for the farmers. As we know, food security is at risk on our island. We've found that out through the pandemic. So your constant education has been fantastic. I was privileged to be asked to be a speaker last year for just a short segment at the conference. Mm-hmm. I missed it this year due to a livestock incident that left me injured. So I missed the whole thing this year, even in the series. So I look forward to that in the future.
Wonderful. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, so I just want to thank the presenters for all your presentations this evening, putting your information together into our package, and engaging Metchosin and collaborating over time. Oh, we do have one more, sorry. Vancouver Islands South Film and Media Commission, Tara Lee Novak.
Thank you. That's okay. Thank you for having me. I am Tara Lee Novak. I'm relatively new. I started in September. You would have worked with Kathleen Gilbert. She was in the role for 14 years. I've been a TV producer for 15 years. I've done government communications, and this role is an intersection of government and production, and it feels familiar. I'm very, very grateful to be here tonight. There's so many noble causes here tonight that you can invest in, and I think our role at the Film Commission, we are a nonprofit economic development office. So in 2024, you invested $2,000 into the Film Commission, and we turned that into $9 million across Metchosin and Esquimalt across 241 businesses. So that report came from the Motion Picture Association. That's a list of all the studios, Disney, Warner Brothers, and they said that's how much we spent in that riding. So that's crew wages, hospitality, restaurants, construction, retail. These are trucks that need to gas up. And our core service is managing a database. So we have 2,500 registered locations. That means if you are a property owner, residential or commercial, you let us know that you're interested in being considered for film projects. We come to your location, we take a bunch of photos, we put it in our database, and then the next time a producer calls us, which is every single day, they send us their script, and we break it down and say, here's the locations that we recommend in the South Island. And then we market the South Island in general. You don't want to go to other places in the world. You want to come to the South Island. It's very convenient to get to a variety of looks. It's a world-class city. We have world-class crews. These are like the key messages that we're sharing with producers. And I'm so encouraged by 2025 so far. We have a major feature filming in this area right now. We have 2 movies of the weeks filming right now. And in about a couple weeks' time, 3 more go to picture. So that includes a show on Global called Private Eyes. It stars Jason Priestley. The show ran in Toronto for 5 years, or 5 seasons, I should say. And the character, Jason Priestley's character, moves to Victoria. And this is such like a rare opportunity to showcase our city as itself. It almost never happens. But it gives you a sense that like Victoria and South Island are on the map, and audiences are demanding it. So we are very busy. And when you invest in the Film Commission, like I said, we help attract bigger projects to help the communities shine. So I'm told that Oak Bay takes the money that they get from parking permits and film permits and location permits, like you could rent out this room, and they invest it into their arts program. So you can create a circular economy through film specifically. And I would have shared our year-end report with you. I'll flip it to you again tomorrow morning, because our wins are the municipality wins. We can't do it without you. And we have some pretty impressive stats. So on average, annually, the film sector generates $60 million for the South Island. I think in terms of the other things that I personally love about film is sometimes film triggers community assets. So what I mean by that is last month we had an electric battery workshop, And that's because we would like to see more movies use electric batteries as opposed to diesel. That means that if you're filming in a community like Metchosin, it's cleaner, it's quieter. But that also means that other people in the community can use those electric batteries or those electric tie-ins. So in the North Island, they share their electric batteries from the films with search and rescue. So again, sometimes films help trigger new assets and new initiatives, but they are meant to be community assets. Any questions?
Thank you. Any questions, Katie? Very little.
Yeah, thank you for your presentation. We had heard from the South that there was going to be incredible tariffs on the film industry of anything that was not filmed south of our border. I'm just wondering if you've heard of any softening of the industry, or to the contrary.
So the World Trade Organization has a moratorium against tariffs for digital transits, I should say. Films are delivered digitally, so the film sector is wondering how the president could change that. That moratorium is in effect until the end of 2026, and it's been renewed for the last 25 years. That's one thing. Tariffs tend to be on goods. It tends to be services that create the films and not goods. We no longer really rely on DVDs, right? They're digital transitions. So there's a lot of complicated nuances that we're just waiting and monitoring. But our phone hasn't stopped ringing. People still want to come here. And it's just helped me identify, I've made a lot of development communications with other parts of the world just so that we're prepared.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Now I noticed everyone's staying, and I am going to make an exit. It's my son's 5th birthday right now. I'd love to have some cake with him. Yeah. So thank you for your time tonight.
Thanks for joining us. Okay, so we have a report here from our CFO, Jeffrey Creek, who is absent this evening. He's at a conference. I suspect that the committee has read through the report as well as all of the submissions. And
Councillor Donaldson, sorry,
yes, sorry.
Public participation.
Oh, good grief. It's okay. Thank you. I'm looking at the clock. So, okay, yeah. Public participation, let's not forget everybody. Anyone from the public that is here that would like to address the committee, please.
Gary Lamb, Hackmore Drive. Just on the scoring matrix for the various initiatives, the one for funding amount versus numbers served, the numbers served, is that Metchosin residents? My question. And then the other point I would make is the weighting. In the 1 to 2 point category, it says high cost per residence greater than $20. Well, $20, how high does that go? And it still scores 1 to 2 points, which seems to raise some questions. So, thank you.
Thank you. And we have no other general public here, so we can move on to.
Excuse me, could we ask the CEO just the question of the question that was asked?
We could do that as we go into the report, perhaps.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. So on page 3, we have, as I was starting to say, a staff report to the grant and aid application review. Pat, can you address the first question we have from the public and then help us through this, please?
Yeah, thanks through the chair. It is for the service of Metchosin residents. I'm not sure about the scoring question. I didn't quite understand it, but we can get back to the resident on that one. And then for council, recommendation is to choose one of the 3 options. As far as the scoring boxes are concerned. So it's basically laid out in the 3 boxes and delineated appropriately. So at this point, you've heard all of the discussion from nice presentations, which I thought were great. And it's up for council's decision.
Okay, so the committee will need to address the grant and aid options this evening to enable us to ratify them in the following council meeting. This is required due to the cancellation of the June 2nd meeting and allowing our finance staff adequate time to process the corresponding checks. So the final decisions will be this evening. So the process is a little different this year than we've done in the past. We have created a matrix and a scoring mechanism to accompany that. Mr. Creed has put together 3 options. The first one actually has an alternate option within it as well, so that is something to consider. So the funding option number 1 is to fund the highest scores. So his notes here are that if full funding was given to the organizations that scored over 80, that would result in a payout of $3,500 or 70% of the total funding to 3 organizations. The alternate to that is that the district could also, or could fully fund the next 2 highest at 79 points because they were so close, resulting in an additional $750 to be paid out at for future requests, which sometimes we do get in the fall for various one-off requests. So that's the first option. The second option is funds of funding scores that were up to 70 points out of 100. If council wanted to fund everyone with a score of plus 70, 4 groups would receive their full request, while the remaining 5 groups would receive anywhere from 13.8% to 69% of the requested amount. This would result in no funding available for the rest of the year. And it's laid out in each table as to how that has been chosen from our staff. And the third one is to fund every group as we have done in the past. Again, 4 groups would receive their full amount of funding, and it's marked with an asterisk. The rest would receive a portion of, whether it's 11% or 55%, with no funding remaining for the rest of the year. Discussion. Mayor Little.
Yeah, thank you. I wanted to commend the CFO for the scoring matrix. In the past, we've sort of done it willy-nilly, and I think this is more of a evidence-based approach. I liked the scoring matrix, and I'm inclined to do the third option, which is fund every group. Thank you.
Councillor.
Yeah, I would definitely go for either second or the third option, but one of them concerns me a bit, and that's the Compost Education Center. They didn't come tonight with the presentation, and in looking at their financial records, their payroll amount is more than $300,000. And that just seems to me, given that most of the groups that we have here are either all volunteer run or on a bare minimum of paid employees. I don't know, it just concerns me a bit. That seems like an awful lot of money in payroll, and I really don't know what it's for, like how many educators they have, who's hired, and anyway, that one just concerns me.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Councillor Gray.
Yeah, thanks to the CFO for the matrix. That's nice to have something to work with. Mr. Lamb's raised some interesting questions, and I imagine a helpful comment from our CAO to say that the mention of residents, or the benefit is to the residents in Metchosin with the numbers that you use to calculate things, so that's helpful. And I guess the difference of the $20, we can find out later, but we can at least understand that it's more than $20 as a high cost per resident under the matrix system. When I'm looking at it and thinking about the needs of the organizations, I think option 1 would be the best in the sense of fulfilling the requests that have been made. but I would take the variation that the CFO has put before us, which is to add the next two highest scores. So that would add the South Vancouver Island Farmers Institute and Access West Shore Society. And then I would probably include then the Juan de Fuca Performing Arts Society for its full amount. And that would leave us with $250 in the kitty.
Councillor Shukin.
I would speak in favor of option 3, especially based on just some of the input we've had today. I think all of the organizations are highly worthy. So, and again, thanks to Mr. Creek for putting us more of a data-driven, layout of options for us.
Councillor.
Yeah, I think I think I would go with option 3 as well, just because the scoring is certainly subjective. And for example, with the Humane Society under the community engagement and impact, they didn't score the maximum 8 for the level of public access and participation or the demonstrated support from the community, even though, according to their records, approximately 1,500 Metchosin residents have either been involved with the Humane Society through adoption or through fostering animals. Well, that's about a third of our population, so it seems to me that is pretty good public participation and involvement. So yeah, I wouldn't like to really cut anybody out of the funding. I know I wish we actually had remained at $10,000, which we had for 1 year there, and not cut it down to 5, because it would be really nice to be able to give these organizations a little more support, because they're all very worthy.
Councillor Gray. Go ahead, Marilyn.
Yeah, no, I was just going to make a resolution that council, the finance committee, adopt option number 3 for the grant and aid.
Okay, I kind of want to make a comment too.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
Go ahead.
Okay, so what I wanted to say as your chair and as a person that initiated the review of doing a criteria and a matrix and worked closely with Mr. Creek on this was so that we would be able to have a more substantial critical analysis, I guess, of each person that comes to us. We had previous council had, just as they had left their term, increased it $10,000. We chose to pull it back at the beginning of our term due to the fact we had unknown concerns of how much we were going to play into things like policing. So that's why we pulled it back. And since then, there's been no suggestion to actually increase it, whether it's lack of interest or lack of funds, I don't know, but at each budget session, no one has suggested we go back up to 8 or 10,000 or more. I did want to say also that I appreciate the first option with funding the highest scores, but also the ones that everybody was quite close. And I think that taking the second part of that, where we have some funds left for a future request, but also acknowledging that it would be 5 people or 5 organizations instead of the 3, still covers off a lot of the services that benefit our community, which we couldn't do without just being a community on its own in the rural sense of how we live. As an example, when we put the matrix together, one community, all their services had to come from the community and stay in the community, and that was more of an urban, rural context. We don't have the ability to have services like a needs crisis line, so to speak. We have to go to other communities organizations across the region. So this is what opens it up, makes us a little bit more unique, and our requirements to suit the to provide services for our community. So I'm kind of like with Councillor Gray in there, that number one really does cover off the goal that we had actually set out to obtain with having the criteria that we had put some time and energy into, and I think that we've actually achieved that with the alternate option, or the one and only option in the first one, which is the funding of the highest scores, including 5 organizations. So Mayor Little, you had a resolution that your motion that you wanted to make.
Yeah, I would just like to move the third option to fund every group for the grant and aid for 2025.
Motion by Mayor Little, seconded by Councillor Epp. Discussion?
Well, sorry. Well, thanks for just speaking to the development of the criteria for a moment, Councillor Donaldson. I appreciate that. What strikes me is, I'll go with if there are arguments in favor of going for every group, we can do that. I just think that we put a lot of yourself, Councillor Donaldson, the CFO, put a lot of work in putting a matrix together, and what we're going to do with the motion is ignore the matrix and just give everybody the money. So we didn't really need to set up the criteria in my mind. I thought the work that had been done was well done, and there were a couple of questions raised about the criteria, but using them, I'd like to use the criteria this time around.
Mayor Little?
Yeah, actually, I used the matrix to come to my final decision, so it was of use to me. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Shukin, did you have some comments?
Yeah, and no disrespect to your comments, Councillor Donaldson, and Councillor Gray's comments. I like the I too looked at the matrix and the scoring when I was going through my own thought processes. But the thing that, again, there are compelling missions from each of the group. I think they provide benefit to not only Metchosin, but the region as well. If we fund every group, we actually meet the targets essentially of 4 of the groups with small amounts, as well as contribute to the broader range of groups as well. And as you know, low on my list, I have to say, was the Vancouver Island Self Film and Media Commission. But we see what tremendous value there is in that organization. So at least we're providing some active contribution to their business plan and business goals. So, yeah, thank you.
Okay, any other discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor of funding number 3? Sorry. Can we have, show of hands again, sorry. Okay. And so I will oppose, and so that is carried. Thank you very much. Okay, so I have a motion to adjourn the special finance meeting. Motion by Councillor Shukin and seconded by Mayor Little. Thank you very much.
Good evening. Welcome to Metchosin Council meeting of May 26, 2025. Thank you, Councillor Donaldson, for the territorial acknowledgement earlier this evening at the finance meeting. Council, before you have the agenda. We have a pink to be added as well. I would like to move the discussion on the fire hall recommendations to just after public participation. Our guest, Mr. Craig, has to catch a ferry in Nanaimo later this evening. We want to allow a necessary time for that. So with those changes, could I have a motion to adopt the agenda as mentioned? Moved by Councillor Shukin, second by Councillor Gray.
I just had a question before we call the motion. I'm wondering, the Fire Hall Steering Committee recommendation on Council's agenda tonight, the committee reports to the Finance Committee. So it would normally go through, their recommendations would go, I guess at the moment, to the Committee of the Whole. And we're being asked for a pretty major decision tonight about the removal of 4450 Happy Valley Road out of the ALR. And it seemed to me that there's been very little public, hard for them to know what's going on, no staff report and no written report on the feasibility study. So I'm just curious, why is it here tonight and not at Council Committee of the Whole?
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure, but what I can say is that there will be adequate discussion with the public involved. I'm envisioning multiple meetings. So what I'd like to do is at least introduce it tonight. We can have a discussion after we hear the presentation and move on from there.
So there's a motion here, a recommended motion that we are not considering tonight, or we are considering?
We are considering it after our discussion.
Thank you.
Okay, so with that, adoption of the minutes, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Mr. Edward Craig, Senior Associate, Johnson Davidson Architecture, Metchosin Fire Hall Feasibility Study. Welcome.
Thank you. That's good. So I'd just like to say thank you for letting me present here. This is, fire halls are extremely important to our firm. We enjoy working with the various communities, and we have a legacy and a strong expertise related to protective services, specifically fire halls. So we've spent a lot of time in fire halls. And I'm here tonight to run through the feasibility study, a brief presentation of that study. And we, as a firm, we responded to the RFP. We were selected as the architects. And so our mission was to complete a feasibility study on your hall. So this presentation is going to take you through our steps from our initial assessment and introduction of the project through to some proposed layouts on the site and some other options. So just a moment on our firm. We have been working on fire halls for close to 50 years, not me personally, but so we've worked over, that number 65 is actually off. We're probably in the range of 100 fire halls. We work with municipalities across BC, even some in the other end of the country. Part of this was related to the idea of housing. We've worked on halls that have co-location with housing, so that's in our wheelhouse. And we like to, amongst everything else we do, focus on sustainability and as well have a cooperative design approach. So very inclusive, making sure everyone just has their voice heard and is part of our design process. So objective report. It's to review replacement options for your fire hall. So your fire hall has been built over many years, I think 1950, 1960, and then in 96 was the apparatus bay. So our approach is we start with the needs analysis. So we take a look broadly at what the hall actually has at the moment. We compare that to best practices and current practices. So from that, we also hone in this case, on your apparatus bay, because we recognize that is appears to be a valuable asset within the larger fire hall. And so there is some consideration of retaining it. So part of this presentation deals with a deeper dive into the realities of reuse and retaining that component of the fire hall. We work through some of the programming. We come up with site options, so which are going to be reflected in this presentation. Those options look at different layouts for the site, sort of a broad approach, bird's eye view, looking at access, size of the building, placement of elements of the project within the site. Then we take that further into conceptual design. We may have some massing, some very preliminary drawings. And then from those, we usually hone in on more supported and preferred options, which could be the jumping off point for the next phase of a project. So from there, we would also land on, pardon me, from there we'd also land on a spot where you could get a Class D pricing. So this feasibility report doesn't get into the nuanced design of a hall, but it does bring you to a point where a professional quantity surveyor or someone similar could price your project with some, well, I wouldn't say certainty, but from a professional standpoint. So we talked about your existing building. As I mentioned, much of it was built in the 1950, 1960s. There are some particular things about a fire hall. For instance, a modern fire hall, to meet code, has to be what's called post-disaster. Post-disaster means from a high level, it has to meet 1.5 times the structural requirements of a normal building. So built into a new fire hall, it's an exceptional structure. The intent there is that in the event of a seismic event or some other disaster, the fire hall is still there and able to function to serve the community. So being a post-disaster facility is extremely important. It's a requirement in the BC Building Code, and it has been for some time. Fortunately, even the apparatus bay, the newest component of the fire hall, does not meet that requirement. And there's been 2 studies from professional structural engineers looking at that apparatus bay to assess its ability to be reused and what it takes to meet that post-disaster criteria. So this list here, this slide, just lists some of the shortcomings of the apparatus bay. And even though it sounds quite negative, it is potentially able to be repurposed. In what form? We'll jump into that a little more, but it would require significant structural upgrades to bring to code, including roof, foundation, walls. The envelope, not structural, but the envelope, if you think of that as a cladding or insulation or something, those walls are just concrete. It's a very inefficient building. In addition to that, the mechanical electrical systems are not up to date. So I'm going to ask you to jump 2 slides ahead. one more. There you go. So this is what we start with is the space program. So I mentioned earlier, we do an analysis of the existing space. We do an analysis of what we understand, best practices, and requirements around NFPA building code require. We work closely with the fire department and the Metchosin team to ensure that we're capturing all the spatial needs and programming for a new fire hall. So although you can't read it, I just wanted to put this up here because there's a lot of data analysis that goes into determining what we think a new fire hall size should be as a starting point. So as you can see there, the bullet points at the bottom, existing building area is about 10,700 square feet. The proposed area is about 6,000 square feet larger. Now that's hall and apparatus bay. And so you can see the gap between those two is not just because the apparatus bay is small, but because virtually every facet of the fire hall, from our findings, it doesn't serve. I don't want to say it's inadequate because I know the fire department's doing wonders with what they have, but it would not represent a new fire hall and the spaces needed. So now, if you could please go back a couple, because I put the slide in the wrong spot. So the gap analysis identifies different areas of the fire hall. For instance, the first one is public. Public means, you know, space where the public would come that otherwise would not be accessible to the fire hall, but the public has space. So this current fire hall, there's none. The next one is EOC. Well, you don't have an EOC in the fire hall. There's other buildings and so on. But my understanding is EOC would be part of the new hall. So the next one we get into administrative, there's a lot of administrative space in the existing fire hall, but it's parceled out into some large and oddly sized rooms and small rooms, other things that it doesn't have the spaces that a typical fire hall and a new fire hall would have. When we get into the quarter side of things, this is just it's called a gap study. It's showing the gap between what you have and what you need. It looks like the spaces are similar, but again, they're not partitioned out into the spaces that you should have. And I'll just give you an example. There's gang washrooms. So in the modern fire halls, for quarters and showering and washing and going to the bathroom, we typically have a single-use stall with a shower and a toilet and a sink, maybe a bench and a locker. There might be 4 of those serving the quarters. The quarters would be individual rooms where the firefighters, they would sleep or rest during downtime. This hall doesn't have its space designated like that. There are some individual rooms for quarters. They don't have the bathrooms. It's not inclusive and it's not private. So, the idea of inclusivity is actually counter to thought is you actually need more privacy to be inclusive. And so in this case, you don't have that for your fire hall. Could you have the next one, please? So this is where you really see the difference. And I'll just go to the sort of the bottom. That is the operational areas. You can see the large square that represents the apparatus bay. Another one that represents the apparatus bay is what you should have. So the apparatus bays and the serving the operational spaces serving the apparatus bay either don't exist or not laid out in a manner which is or laid out in a manner which we would have in a modern hall. And one more, please. Okay, so we did an analysis of the pros and cons the costs, programming, et cetera, of this apparatus bay, because the existing apparatus bay, it is a quality building in itself. It's concrete tilt-up construction. It seems to be in relatively good shape. That's a distinctly separate thing from operationally being designed to accommodate a modern fire department. So some of the things that are positives about the apparatus bay, and I'm just going to focus on the next few slides in this apparatus bay. If the apparatus bay was to be retained during construction, it could be used for its current function, meaning the fire hall would have a component of it which is operational at all times and not have to entirely relocate to another site or a temporary building. It's likely would reduce some cost, potentially how it's repurposed, and that has to be dived into in a more detailed way to see where the design takes it. So, also having that apparatus bay, it could provide flexibility and storage for smaller vehicles and trailers, etc. We imagine actually repurposing the apparatus bay as an administrative side and building a new apparatus bay. So there is potential to reimagine that big building in many shapes and forms. It doesn't necessarily have to be a parking the vehicles. So there's on the flip side, we really found, and so there's a greater report that supports this in a more technical manner. So this is just a high level, picking the highlights on the report. So unfortunately, the building code requires a fire hall to meet post-disaster, as I mentioned. Apparatus bay doesn't. Health and safety is actually equal or more important. The firefighters, when they are dealing with fire events, are subject to all forms of carcinogens of burning, burning buildings. This fire hall, our findings are that this fire hall does not adequately provide decontamination spaces that a modern fire hall require, and therefore is opening up the firefighters to dealing with contamination on their bodies and also pulling it through into the rest of the fire hall on a continuous basis. Also, some of the spaces in the fire hall, these two photographs are to express the problems with the circulation. So best practices, firefighters have to, in an event, respond very quickly in a measured manner to get in their gear, get in their vehicles, and get on the door. And seconds count. So as you can see, there's a fleet of full-size vehicles, and there's very little circulation space for the firefighters to get around. There's not room for two people to walk side by side or cross paths. All these things add up. In an event, so number one, their gear storage is in the apparatus bay, which clutters the apparatus bay. It makes people changing and circulating around the vehicles, running on top of each other. So it's a bit of a dance I can imagine you have to do every time there's an event. On top of that, there's not adequate circulation between and around the trucks. And you can see that there's only maybe a foot or two and a foot or two to get in front of the truck when it's parked. So there's just a lot of issues within the circulation, getting to and around the trucks. There's issues with decontamination and lack thereof, the facilities to support decontamination. And then one of our final findings is the apparatus bay doors are too small. So fire service vehicles have gotten bigger over the years. These vehicles are standard size. Apparatus bay doors, when we design them now, are 4,200 or 14 feet, roughly by 14 feet. I believe these are 12 by maybe 12 or 14. It's the width that is problematic. It's difficult to back in. It's difficult to drive out. I'm sure you need people to, I'm not sure you need them, but assist with some of that driving in and out. And it's just one other element that makes it difficult to respond in a timely manner. So please. So it sounds like I'm beating a dead horse here. I'm gonna continue for a bit. So this is program and code. Some of this is a bit of rehash. Mentioned the gear in the apparatus bay, storage above the apparatus bay. There is no direct exhaust system. So here's another one. A typical fire hall has something. Typically, it's a Netterman or Plime Vent system. These are systems that have hoses that connect directly to the exhaust pipe. They travel on a rail. When the fire truck turns on, diesel exhaust goes into the hose. It's dealt with through HVAC. None of the contamination exists in the hall. There's no inhalation of diesel fumes. When they travel out, the hose disengages from the vehicle, and they go off. The space is relatively clean. There's no particulate buildup on any of their gear, the breathing apparatus, any of that. And so they take that right out of the system. And the same thing, the first thing they do when they return the trucks, they would just stick that back on the exhaust pipe. We haven't done a fire hall without that system. I can't remember, it's been a number of years. So the existing system right now is, I think, just a fan above, in a few spots above, generally discharging air, or extracting and discharging the air. So it's not meeting NFPA, it's not meeting WorkSafe, and it's not meeting code. So then there's the structural and life safety concerns and the building envelope. As I mentioned, that building does not have insulation. So it's actually just an extra cost to maintain its temperature. So I know an apparatus bay is not necessarily a heated space like this room, but it is a heated space. So it's not, when it's zero outside, the apparatus bay is probably 15 degrees. When it's a tempered space, which means you're spending money on heating a space that is poorly insulated. Next one, please. Okay, so just beating this drum. On the right is a typical apparatus bay. That's a tandem bay. So a tandem bay means one vehicle parked behind another vehicle. So the frontline vehicles would be in the front. They'd probably be the first ones to turn out, and then you could have secondary vehicles and trailers behind. That is the size of what we would do today. That is the size of the apparatus bay that you have. So it's not adequate for what you're asking it to do. So it's not just the Metchosin Fire Hall. It's common. Fire halls get built 30, 40, 50, 60 years ago. The standards are different. The vehicles are smaller. The decontamination and the washrooms, everything has progressed, particularly in the last 20 years. And so what was acceptable a number of years ago is no longer acceptable. It's kind of like when no one used to wear seatbelts. It seemed okay, but you realize rightly that it's pretty important to wear a seatbelt. Okay, next please. So we did a quick review of costs. So this is really a list of costs. Everything I mentioned has a cost to it. So it's not an inexpensive idea to keep the apparatus bay with the intent to use it as a apparatus bay for firefighting equipment. we, at this point, not sure if it'd be more expensive to keep it than tear it down and start new. Alternatively, it could be repurposed as a building or something that does not require to be post-disaster, not necessarily part of the fire hall itself, but there's other, I imagine, for your engineering or workshop or something, maybe there is another role for it, and the life of that building can be extended many, many years. So we've talked about some of the shortcomings, and for all these things, there is a solution. Not all of them mean rebuilding an entirely new fire hall, but we could repurpose that apparatus bay. I could run through this, but a couple things we haven't maybe talked about is the general HVAC and sprinkler system lighting. All those are also not up to date. Okay, so now we're going to get into some more fun stuff. We started looking at designs for new fire hall. So when I say designs, it's really about understanding the size of the components that would be placed on the site, the best arrangement for access to the road, responding to responses, and for including training and a hose tower and so on. And also integrating it into the current property. So we looked at options that show retaining the apparatus bay. We've approached this from the point that the quarters admin side that exists right now would be replaced. So some of the options now, there was a mention of the LR lands earlier. You brought that up, sir. We had shown some options coming up in this on the ALR land as an option, just as it's a starting point to see, okay, is it feasible? What's the impact of that on the project? Is that something we want to do? Just sort of covering the different options. So all this one is just showing the size of the property. The red box represents the apparatus bay to give it some scale. The green on the right-hand side is the aforementioned ALR land. That is a typo, preferred option, that's not that. The next one, please. Okay, so this is what you started looking at. Based on the space program that we developed, we came up with the 16,000 square feet. Those sort of colored pieces represent what the fire hall footprint could look like. The large red, if I'm just looking at the one on the left, the large red box, that would be 3 bay tandem apparatus bay. The orange is what we often call a spine, where we is an aggregate of service spaces for the apparatus bay. So they have to have an SCBA room where they deal with all the oxygen and so on, and the compressor. There's other service rooms related to the operations of the fire hall, which we'd keep in the spine at the edge of the apparatus bay. The yellow represents, in the one on the left, that's a footprint of the quarters and admin side, and that is would be 2 stories. The purple and the sort of light aqua color are parking and front areas, which it could be developed like at the front of many fire halls. They like a spot for ceremony, like a spot for a public entry. Just to designate, like right now, as an example, your building doesn't really have an entry. You kind of come around the back and go in, and the front is not really its presence to the street is not embracing the community that's my observation. Anyhow, so most fire halls want a civic presence, and they would like to also engage the public and have a public spot that we typically have at the front. Doesn't have to be, of course, because there's orientation associated with this building as an example. So where entry fees it's to be determined, of course. Now, the one on the right is the footprint of a single-story quarters and admin. So you can see the orange piece is fine, and the red, the apparatus bay. The yellow represents a single-story version, so there's a little less parking and smaller area on the front. Both of these have large spaces for training, which is represented by the gray. The purple lines with the arrows, that represents the circulation of the fire vehicles exiting and returning into the apparatus bays. And so those are, from a very high level, the basic elements that would go into a site. Now, of course, there's lots of little pieces. You have to have garbage space. You have to have space for generator. You have to have, you know, there's other storage bins, what have you. So that, and there's training areas as well. So this is just broadly showing the potential of the site, and that what we've got here fits on the footprint of the existing site. This one, please. Okay, pardon me. So these two, incorporating reuse of the apparatus bay, of the existing apparatus bay. On the one on the left, there's a two-story admin quarters. There's a double tandem bay, and then a reuse as an apparatus bay of the existing apparatus bay. Not apparatus bay. So we could see that potentially repurposed to have a single vehicle. You could put all the spine work in there. It has the potential to be turned into a two-story quarter side or admin side as well. So there are a million options for that building, repurposing it to another use or repurposing it to another use outside of fire and repurposing it to another use in fire. So there are opportunities. So in this case, the one on the right is an example. You can see the two yellow, those would be two-story elements to make up all the area that's needed. But converting and building on the apparatus bay. Okay, can we do the next one? So if you were to tear down in its entirety the fire hall, you need to have a temporary quarters, a temporary fire hall. You may have another facility in your municipality around here that you could repurpose or temporarily use. But at a minimum, there are some elements. You need to house your apparatus because they can't be stored outside, particularly in the winter. You need somewhere for the firefighters for the staff to exist. You need somewhere for them to sleep, depending on how much that happens. You also need to have the shower and decon functions, and you need lots of storage, and likely you'll probably need a gen set as well. So you can see on the right, sort of there's a diagrammatically idea of all the different pieces. On the left is how it could exist temporarily using that the ALR side as something could be rebuilt. That's maybe a luxury version of a temporary fire hall, but even if you had a tent structure half the size, you would still need like a triple wide trailer or something to that effect to have the fire hall with a kitchen, with a meeting room, with a training area, with the washrooms and sleeping quarters and so on. So it actually becomes a big thing. Next slide, please. Okay, so now we're starting to look at, we did some options that looked at retaining the apparatus bay and building on the ALR side. The one on the right is entirely on the ALR side. And there are some very helpful things to building on the ALR side. Number one, you have continuous use of your fire hall while the other one is being built. So there's no cost associated with temporarily relocating.
I mean, that's the greatest one. That's the main thing. In addition to that, you would be left with a building that could be repurposed for other uses. So you've built the fire hall, but you've also gained a apparatus bay in particular that could have many, many more years of service life to it. Does not have to meet the post-disaster. It's not part of the fire hall anymore. So on the one on the left, where the apparatus bay is repurposed and maintain its use as an apparatus bay, it would have to be upgraded, and then the rest of the building would be built on the ALR side, and you could likely tear down, but there's many options to what to do with the remaining land. The one on the right is entirely within ALR land. It's because the land's immediately adjacent to your fire hall, in terms of service and response times, it wouldn't have an impact. And then you'd be left with a building to do what you want, reuse if needed. And then one more, please. So this is, called a preferred option. This is an option on the ALR land, which works very well, if I do say so. It incorporates a three tandem bay apparatus bay, host tower, which is that orange block sort of on the bottom right. It has a 2-story, because of the narrowness of the site, it lends itself to building a little up versus spread out. A 2-story admin quarters side. It has a decent training yard. It has entry, returning firefighting vehicles and parking. It could be returning on kind of the left-hand side and exiting also on the Happy Valley Road. It has an ample training yard and has the required sort of turning radius to get into the apparatus bay for the larger vehicles. So this would be an example of how the ALR land, if that was a direction that your community decided to go down, could be a layout. And it's relatively compact. Okay. What else do we have? Anything else? So, next steps. Unless we're challenged with adding some additional information, we would complete our feasibility study. Our feasibility study is sort of a detailed account of many of the things I spoke to. It details some of the challenges with your existing hall. It details the expectations that would be met with a new hall, including meeting the building code, meeting the requirements in NFPA, those two primarily. But then it also takes into consideration the realities of a modern fire hall where changing sleeping quarters, washroom facilities are all separated. For us to move forward, regardless of the report, some decisions would have to be made if you guys are going to keep the apparatus bay or not. If you're interested in moving towards the ALR land, I know that's very big decisions, but those are the sorts of things that would need for us to not necessarily complete it, but it would be nice. I could complete the report, it's almost done anyhow, but that would give a result to the end of the report. So making those choices would let us take the design to the next level. And that's sort of where we land. Maybe one piece I didn't mention here was within the report, we would be able to get a Class D costing. So that's something, I did mention that earlier. That's something that's very handy if you're, of course, trying to figure out budgeting and that sort of thing, because these new buildings are not inexpensive. I think that was it. That's just an image of a hall we did in Delta, BC. They're using the model that we did for the washrooms. They've taken that to 7 other halls and are implementing that design into basically all their halls. And to update them without updating the entirety of the hall, they're going through and updating 7 quarters and shower and change spaces. So that's it. Hopefully that laid out sort of where we're at. For us, it's a very exciting project. Whatever you do, it's been a lot of fun just getting to this point.
Okay, great. Thank you very much for your presentation. Council, have questions? Councillor Gray.
I wonder if we might, through the chair, get a copy of the slides so that we could read them. Very difficult to see here.
Yeah, okay. So council can have copies of the slides.
That'd be very helpful. And perhaps if there's a report to go with it, we could see the report as well.
Yeah. Does council have any specific questions for our guest? Councillor Schuppen.
Thank you very much, Mr. Craig. Yeah, you should. Through you, very little. To me, the question of, well, sorry, basic question first. So if you're Joe Q citizen on the street and you talk about a fire hall, chances are you're going to think the admin building, training building, where the firefighters gather, and also the apparatus bay. It's together.
Yes.
But really, we're a little bit more enlightened here, and we think fire hall and apparatus bay. So we're separating them. But what is the term used for that singular unit? I mean, maybe fire station is, or public safety building, is that used as well?
It is. Public safety buildings, in our experience, I mean, it's nuanced. They often combine fire, police, ambulance. That's sort of a broader term.
Okay.
I would just call it a fire hall or fire station. It's funny, different municipalities prefer their different words. Burnaby likes fire station. Vancouver, I think, likes fire hall, 2 words, but everyone has a nuance. I would assume a fire hall includes both apparatus bay and the remainder of the spaces. Okay. And the focus on why I singled out the apparatus bay here was just because I understood it does have some potential, and there's consideration in the community. Is it possible to at least keep the apparatus bay because it's a concrete building? It seems to be in decent condition as a building.
And the different dates of when they were constructed are significant. One 1960s, one 1996.
They're very significant.
Yeah.
Being built in 1996 is still probably 4 or 5 codes in the past.
Yeah.
And particularly in the last couple of code issues, there have been substantial increases in structural requirements around buildings. And that's why there's a bit of time spent on that, because we don't want to suggest that although that apparatus bay can be repurposed, it's an easy thing to do. There's a lot of work that would have to go into it to bring it up to today's code.
So my follow-up question is, I do not think there is a question that the structure we know as the fire hall needs to be replaced. And I don't believe that there should be any question among the community. It is a building that was built in the 1960s. It is a URM building, which means unreinforced masonry building, which means basically rubble in a decent sized earthquake. Yeah. And so you have one of the most important buildings with the most important people in a disaster within rubble. The question, though, is the apparatus bay.
Yes.
And I mean, I feel like we're edging toward some sort of outcome of that. But I feel like we're still wrestling a little bit, as much as I've been able to understand about this. So I'd like to believe that we're building a building for decades to come, 60, 70 years, maybe more. So, but I guess my question to you is, how should we make, are there, key concepts that would help us make the decision? Are there, again, it's almost...
I think there's one slide that showed the comparison between the apparatus bay as a visual, exists today, and modern day one. Yeah. I would say, to me, your apparatus bay as it stands is my recommendation would be to not use it as an apparatus bay anymore. It doesn't meet the programming. It doesn't meet the operational needs of the fire hall. It doesn't meet the decontamination needs. It doesn't have the structural capacity in the event of a seismic event. So there's just too many things for it as a piece of a fire hall that it doesn't meet to be. I don't think it's worthy of retaining it. We really want to dive into it though to come up with that comment, because I don't want to say just delete it. Just everything is very expensive and prices have gone up, and we want to take a serious look at that apparatus bay and get an idea if it is something that could be incorporated or reused. And so we could, but it would require serious upgrades, and it would also, in my opinion, require additional apparatus bay space. So it's a bit of a tough nut, the apparatus bay. Hopefully that was all right.
Additional questions? I've got a question. If we were to repurpose the apparatus bay for the EOC, for instance, it'd be a great facility for the EOC. They're going to have 2 vehicles, and they've got other equipment for their emergency response. Would it require much upgrade to the structure to bring it to code for another purpose?
So you mentioned for an EOC, I'm not sure if that, I don't know if that specifically would fall under the same requirements as a fire hall, but.
So if we wanted to move the search and rescue from the small little building they're in now.
I don't know if there's a detail in there that whether that's still part of a fire hall. But if I could reimagine your question as, let's say I wanted to repurpose it as somewhere where we could have our vehicles for your sanitation or something.
Sure.
I don't think it would require, certainly it would not require anywhere near the upgrade that the code would require of a fire hall to serve the fire hall purposes. When you do a significant renovation to something, you trigger upgrades regardless. So it would just have to be brought up to today's code. And, to tell you the truth, I'm not sure. I don't think the structural assessment that was done by a professional structural engineer addresses what it would need to operate as a non-fire hall, non-post-disaster building. I would think it would be significantly less upgrades.
Okay. And any other questions from council? Go ahead, Councillor Gray.
I had a question, perhaps through to the chair to the CAO, and that was, Mr. Pyatt, were any changes made to the fire hall feasibility study RFP? That's to say the Schedule A and the deliverables?
So the question was there any changes made to the RFP?
Like what exact, through the chair, what kind of changes are you thinking? Like what?
Oh, well, I had a few questions for Mr. Craig about things that were going to be covered in the contract. And of course, there's terms in the contract that it was possible for the district to change the terms. So maybe the questions aren't appropriate at the moment. I just wanted to be sure if I go through a line of questioning that in fact the deliverables are the same as what we were presented.
To the chair, I personally did not make any changes to the RFP. Not sure about the steering committee. Thank you.
Go ahead, ask your questions.
Thanks. Well, I guess the first question was timing. We had an extraordinary meeting last summer in July, and I gather the report was going to be completed within 4 months with a report to council in October. And I wondered, through the chair, Mr. Craig, was there something that slowed us down?
That's a good question. I'm thinking back. Maybe you guys can help. I don't recall the exact date that we got started on our work. we do it before Christmas? I feel like it was this year. I'm sorry, I don't have that specific date.
That's okay. We've been waiting for the report to hear what's going on. And so I'm just interested, it's come many months later than expected. So I wanted to know, I'm just going to run through some of the things that you probably looked at, and I wondered if you might offer comment about them. One of the first study deliverables was the issue of long-term projection requirements, the impact of future densification on the fire department resources and response coverage. And did you have a look at that?
Yeah, I did look at that, and I've recently read with RFP. Now that that actually is not something an architect can do. We don't have the ability to make projections on future service requirements. I'm pretty sure we outlined in our response what we would provide, and I don't think there's any other architectural competitors would have done the same. That would have required another specific, not designer, but a group that does, there's one called Firewise we've used before, and they specifically look at response times, locations, projections. It's not something an architectural firm typically would do. That's not within our expertise. It's the site and the building and the operations of the fire department itself. That's what we would address.
Thank you. And then through the chair, you mentioned earlier, it was your understanding that the EOC would be part of the new fire hall?
I think so. I think it's in there that it is.
And so there was an analysis that you did to determine that? I guess it was analyze the community's need to determine whether the EOC would be a standalone or part of the new public safety building. So
that's another thing. We do not do an analysis of what the community needs. We will respond. It was our understanding that we would provide spaces to accommodate the EOC, and those are reflected in the gap study and the space program.
So through the chair, rather than the EOC going into the apparatus bay, if it was decommissioned as an apparatus bay, the EOC will actually be in another part of the building.
Yeah, the EOC would be within the umbrella of the entirety of the building.
The next one that I was wanted to ask about, I've got a bit of a list here just going through the RFP, was we were hoping that you might evaluate the potential for integrated housing units. And I think the mayor spoke to this at the particular meeting where we approved the RFP, that there would be housing for women in need and services, housing for firefighters, housing for farm workers, and affordable housing for others unable to afford the current housing prices. I wondered if you looked at that.
We did start to look at that, and so we've actually on a few different fire halls. Oh, I shouldn't say few. We built one in Vancouver where we did have 4 stories of wood framed housing sitting on top of a concrete fire hall. Those are almost humble brags. Point being is we did consider housing, but I don't feel that we had direction on how to do it. So number one, housing on top of a fire hall is quite expensive. The fire hall itself has to be more robust to support 4 stories, what have you, above, and as well as the housing being the fire hall being post-disaster, the housing should therefore be post-disaster, which therefore means there's it's a more robust building and more costly. So our assumption was that the housing would be adjacent to the fire hall on whatever the configuration of land was. We would love to see housing. Almost every community needs it, whether it's for the firefighters or social housing or rental or what have you. We have not shown that in diagrams here, and in fact we haven't prepared diagrams, but we easily could if that is something that's still a mandate.
Through the chair, I think the understanding at the time was that by putting housing on the fire hall, we would be able to reduce the costs. I hear you saying something a little different.
Well, what I'm saying is to put housing on top of a fire hall. It has been done, and it's usually done on top on sites that are a challenge in terms of their size. As an example, the one we did I shouldn't say started, the fire hall we recently built in Squamish it's on concrete because they're anticipating housing. The housing was something that would come along if funding and so on was figured out. The example why I'm citing them is because they're somewhat land poor, so they don't have a lot of options. So to build on top was pretty much the only way they could do it. It incurs a lot of costs. As I said, the building that it sits on has to be more robust by a significant amount. And then it also has to be post-disaster because it's probably bad policy to have something that would fall down on top of your post-disaster building. So we would think the housing would be adjacent. It can still be efficient and depending on how it's stacked and how it's set out, it could be a very compact design, but it would likely, to my mind, be its own freestanding building, which would relieve it from the requirements around post-disaster and would separate it further from the operational uses of the fire department.
That's very helpful. Thank you.
The comments regarding reducing the costs, there were significant monetary incentives for including housing in a rebuild. And so that's where the comments came up, that it would help reduce the cost of the overall building.
Yes, it's in the RFP, and the idea was that the successful applicant would delve into those questions and conduct a comprehensive research and reporting on all available funding sources for redevelopment and the potential integration of housing. So I think that's where that was. I wondered if you just mentioned the financing question, and part of the RFP that we saw was identifying potential financing strategies. I gather the cost estimate might happen if we make some decisions that would help you move to a cost estimate.
If there was let's say a preferred option selected for the purposes of costing, whether you move forward with that preferred option or not, if there's please price this option, that would let us go down the path for costing.
So maybe I could ask you, the chair, numbers have been kicked around in the community. You hear things like, well, maybe $1 million would build this, if we use the apparatus pay. And somebody else says, oh no, this is going to be $14 million. And it's pretty easy to point up at you can see some prices up in the tens of millions for larger facilities. Do you have any sense of what the preferred option here would cost? I mean, just a ballpark.
So, I could say it this way. There's a lot of factors that obviously affect cost. What we found is the getting on the ground is the most expensive part. So if you have a site that requires soil improvements or something along those lines, it's going to be costly. Or if you have a lot of fill or material that has to be trucked in around, it exponentially can add cost. Now, there's ways to approach cost savings. We would promote a wood first sort of policy. It's more sustainable, but also local trades can build it, and you could do it dimensional lumber in some combination with posts and beams or what have you. But so there's approaches to the building that are less costly than others, and we recognize there's a fine line because the building, as you guys mentioned, should at least last for 75 years. Having said that, there's still materials and efficiencies that we can incorporate that are less expensive than others. So I'm not sure if I totally answered your question.
So $1 million or 14 million?
So in terms of somewhere in the middle, in terms of square footage costs, we're doing a fire hall on Salt Spring Island There is some glulam beams, and but otherwise it's conventionally framed out of dimensional lumber, including TGI roof structure, so manufactured joists, relatively inexpensive. And then the cladding is metal cladding and like a standing seam metal roof and so on. So quality, but not super expensive. And I believe that came somewhere in between $550 and $650 a square foot. Now that also relates to how much site work there are. Now we did a couple fire holes in Burnaby. We had to carve into the edge of a mountain, and it was more like $1,200 a square foot. So it's hard to just give a number, but our approach is we found the best success with sort of dimensional lumber in combination with wood posts and glulam beams.
That's very helpful, thank you. And recognizing it's just a number.
Yeah,
that's okay. The other issue, I suppose, was this question here about research on funding sources and funding options. We have a note from our CFO pointing at one particular source of funding, but are you providing advice in that regard as well?
We're in what we're able to do. So I was trying to remember the name of this grant. We have recommended, and it's been used. I can mess my holes up here. It is the Green Municipal Fund, GMF.
I think the one I've got here that we're going to talk about a little bit later is the Canadian Community Building Fund.
That's not that one. Anyhow, there's one. We have some experience, and that's not my expertise. There's other people in the firm who could give a little more help on that. But there are a few grants that we are familiar with. The one I was mentioning, I think, provides 15% grant and then very good loan terms, if that's something you're interested in. But on a $10 million building, 15% is $1.5 million. So that's a lot of money, actually. Even if the building's less, it's still a lot of money.
Maybe I could ask a slightly different question. We've had two reports done by Skyline Engineering that council's had a chance to see, and both of them relate to the apparatus bay.
Yeah.
One was done in 2022, and the other was done just the other month in 2025. They both give this exact same recommendation. There's other words around it, but eventually they say, you may wish, that's I guess the district, you may wish to have a more detailed schematic seismic upgrade plan prepared with sufficient detail that a qualified general contractor could provide order of magnitude cost to help better inform a decision on how to proceed with the apparatus bay. Is that something that we should follow up on, or are you following up on?
First of all, the latter, no, we're not following up on that. Should you? It depends. So how would I put this? Without doing a detailed design, they can't come up with anything for someone to price. It's a the engineers recognize the panel connections, the roof system, the footings, all these different pieces are not up to today's standard. Without diving into that and doing their analysis and their design and doing all their forces and all that stuff, they can't give someone something to price. I think the purpose of these, well, initial one was more of an assessment, and the second one, the nuance is that it's like specifically what is it going to take to upgrade this and identify the main pieces. And so there is a subtlety in the difference of those two reports. And that was the purpose of the second report, which we recommended be undertaken. And it, to my mind, that satisfied what we were asking them to do.
Thank you. And then the Fire Hall Steering Committee on March 11 asked, or made a recommendation, I suppose, to the district that JDA cost the upgrading for the current apparatus bay. Is that something we're planning to do?
No. We used to, I'd say pre-COVID, costs were increasing, but it was more linear. And we had a number of years, probably, I don't know, 10, 20 years, where you felt things were going up 5% a year or something like that. After COVID, it's really, we're unable to do that with any accuracy at all. So we were doing, I watched, because we went back and we looked at costs for a number of our holes that we did, even from the early 2000s onward. And it was incrementally 250, 275, 305, 325. And it was a linear kind of thing like that. And COVID came and it just sort of went like that, as I'm sure you know. And it hasn't really gone down. And so we're very uncomfortable suggesting budgeting for buildings these days because we don't feel we can provide the inaccurate price.
I guess that introduces the question of how do we work together in terms of final cost estimate?
Well, we get a quantity surveyor, so a cost estimator, a professional cost estimator. They could take one of our preliminary sites. We could give them the areas and they'd take our space program, so that the chart, and they would have a very detailed sense of square footage. We would, to supplement that, we would give them suggested wall assemblies and roof assemblies and foundations, and they'd say typically this is what we see or what we would propose, and they could apply that to the building, and they would apply their numbers for mechanical systems and so on, particularly the ones that we've worked with in the past. They're very familiar with fire halls, so you can get a decent price, and they build into that a number of contingencies, and people are usually shocked, and then but they're pretty good.
Thank you. And that's in relation to, because it's a new build, you've got it all there. You can lay it out and you know what you're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then maybe my final question.
Sorry, one nuance to that. So in that, I think it mentions a different class costs.
Yes.
It would be a class D.
And could you explain what class D is for us?
A class D is when you broadly have areas and sizes and some assemblies, and they can put a number to it with a decent contingency or contingencies to sort of cover everything. A class, pardon me, class C would be at, one second. So D's, let's say the lowest. Class C would be at the end of maybe design development, where you now have floor plans, they're hard line, you have, they can quantify the number of doors, the exact takeoffs from walls. They have probably a light description of mechanical, electrical, and structural systems. So they have an ability to take that much more detail so they will get detailed and some of the contingencies will go down. A class C would be somewhere probably short of tender, where you have a set of or midway, maybe it's not that far along, but a very well set of drawings and specifications that they could take and price. And then the class A would be like a full documentation of the building, everything spec'd and done, and it's basically someone could bid on that. So at this stage of our process, it would be D.
Thank you. The final question I wanted to ask was, as Councillor Shuk was saying, we haven't made a decision about what to do about this entire thing. You know that very well.
It's common.
Yeah, so here we are.
Big decision.
Mm-hmm. And you've pointed out some deficiencies, particularly in the apparatus bay, but overall. And thank you for that. And we'll get a chance to look at it a little more closely when we have the written documents. But I'm struck that this all started for some of us, and in the community, I think, because of a seismic question, seismic stability of the building. And then, sort of comes from that the engineering side of things. But there's another aspect to this, which is the risk tolerance question, the cost versus the benefit. We're a very small community. just over 1,000 taxpayers. So it's a big ask when we get into large numbers. And we haven't really discussed at the table this question about, how does that decision get made? So we've had, was it 3 or 4 earthquakes recently, and one of the newspapers reported that they're expecting the big one between now and 300 to 800 years from now. So I'm struck about this cost, our ability to pay. And are you addressing that question at all, or is that somebody else's bailiwick?
For us, that is addressed through meeting the building code.
Understood. But existing buildings don't meet the building code. I don't think the Oak Bay Fire Department, I don't think meets the building code.
No, and the next code, the last one will be slightly on the date. The difference between maybe this and the last building code was the best part of your existing hall was 1996. I think 5 codes prior. And so I might have been 4. Don't mean to overstate. And so that's a significant departure from where the expectations are that you'd have to meet today. And then your other part is 1950, 1960, which is also required to be post-disaster, which can't even be close. And as you mentioned, the concrete block and so on, it's so it doesn't meet. But from my personal point of view, I'm not sure if that's worse than the health and safety of the firefighters and what they're subjected to by having their apparatus bay with no dedicated exhaust, with no decontamination washrooms, with no zoning getting into the hall. So I mean, it kind of goes on and on. So
yes, that's what.
Can you function in this manner in perpetuity? I imagine you could. It's one of those difficult things you guys are grappling with. So we've just done an assessment of your building and given a recommendation, knowing that there's just big costs associated with this, that there's not an easy answer to any of it.
Thank you. I very much appreciate that. It's a difficult one for us, particularly because of the cost relative to our population. And I think most of us understand if the cost is extraordinarily high, then that may drive us to amalgamation with Colwood, say, or Langford, and that would be a real switch up for real change for our community, because I think we enjoy our identity and what we're able to do here, and so it'll be a fundamental question for us, depending on the size of the number at the end of the day. And nervousness there. But I want to just say thank you to Council for your patience with me going through that, and thank you very much for your help.
You're very welcome. It's my pleasure.
Council, do you have any other questions? Our guest has to catch a ferry. It's not the only opportunity we'll have to speak to him, but if you have any other questions, please ask. Go ahead, Councillor Donaldson.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for your presentation. I have been attending the excuse me, the steering committee meetings, and so this is now going to give me a fresh set of eyes. I'll understand it differently. I do have a couple of questions, very lay terms, I have to say. So we've had a number of studies done on engineering studies of quarrying the ground, all that sort of stuff. Is if we were going to stay on the same building envelope. So we've already know that we own the land, we know that it's stable. You've already identified that we're ahead of the game in that regard. So that's good news if we were to stay in the same spot. So the apparatus bay being one of the focal points to protect our most important asset. Not to say that our humans are not, because they certainly are, but if there is a shaker, those doors may not go up. So we've got to deal with that first. If we are to refurbish or support the apparatus bays to a seismic standard and be able to add on an additional bay or whatever, on one side, and then on the other side, new administration that is both seismic on both sides. Does that also help improve that apparatus bay?
I think so. As outlined, there are a lot of costs associated with upgrading the apparatus bay. But if it was repurposed as an apparatus bay, I don't think some of the replacement costs, like hopefully I'm not speaking ahead of myself, replacing the roof in its entirety, structure, some of those things I don't think would be required. Also incorporating that building into a new building, there might be some efficiencies of the structure. It's very hard to answer the question though, but I think likely there would be some cost savings.
Okay, and so, right. Well, maybe even assuming it's that part stays as a single story. I don't know, because that is something that came up at the steering committee. And maybe the administration is just 2-story. So space clearly is an issue as well. We have a lot of smaller vehicles, like utility type vehicles that aren't, firefighting apparatus that go out. So if we could designate the apparatus bays as strictly emergency vehicles, and others, whether it's, I think we have a utility trailer, we have a ATV, we have some different service trucks that could probably have their own garage, say, where the cans are or whatever. I don't know the placement. Again, trying to think of space, and I haven't looked closely at the space because I didn't understand all of how it was going to be put together. So looking at, again, at the building envelope and where we could maximize the space for the importance of each asset. Also allows me to sort of question how we would do all of this and still be an active department, be ready to go to an emergency services. So temporary facility, whether we put some of our admin in the school, we've got places there for people to shower and whatnot, where the apparatus would be if we were actually trying to repurpose it, because that has to be in a facility. And these are discussions that have come up in the steering committee, just as conversations, something that's a temporary structure on the ALR piece of land as temporary. Not something that's going to stay there forever. That way, then it goes back to being in the ALR, which this community values highly. There's a lot of logistics involved, and I know when I go back and look at your report, it'll probably sink in a little bit more, and each time we get more information, it make more sense. I believe that a lot of the constituents will be asking a lot of questions too. I won't have answers for them because I'm just as a lay person as they are. So I think there are a lot of different things, and I don't know if there's more answers that you can give me.
There's a lot of moving. You're absolutely right. There's a lot of moving parts, and even repurposing it presents challenges because you will be out of using the apparatus bay for a period of time.
Yes.
And so there will be some temporariness to this, regardless. But the extent of, paying for temporarily relocating your entirety of your fire department versus reusing part of the fire hall, i.e. the apparatus bay, so that you can see there is potentially some savings, but it's a real moving target because it is very complicated.
So I guess what I was thinking of is if we could build it in phases.
Yes, absolutely could.
With the apparatus bay, that being done in the warmer months, we're not going through the winter with, things freezing up and whatnot. I imagine this takes more than a year to build, probably 2 years.
A typical hull is anywhere from 12 to 18 months.
Okay.
It depends on many things, but I imagine like Vancouver, you can build all year round for the most part. Calgary and the prairies, it's a different story sometimes. So, and the scale of your project, at, you know, what we've identified as 16,000 square feet plus, that's not a massive hall. I shouldn't say massive, that's not a particularly big hall, but it's a very good size hall. So I would, as a starting point, I'd probably think 14 months construction time. And the builders in the room, they might have a better idea than that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we better let you go. We've got a lot to discuss. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. I just have a question for the fire chief. Some of the things that we hadn't discussed previously was if we were to, where would we have our facilities if we were to use the existing footprint and demolish or change the current existing? Where would we, where would the firefighters be? Where would we keep our, have you thought about that? I can't think of any place we have to facilitate that, but you might.
Sorry, just to be clear, are you talking for like potentially sleeping quarters or just camaraderie, have our dinner, training kind of thing where we currently do that down in the big room?
All of that.
No, we haven't really thought about that yet.
Okay.
There is some consideration to potentially, you know, we've batted around ideas like the school or the current EOC, whatever space might be available, or if we have to put up temporary housing. We're just a little ways away from that yet, so we haven't quite wrapped our head around that one.
Okay. Okay, so lots to talk about. Do we have any other comments on this before we go to the public participation?
Sorry, just for clarity, Mayor Little, we'll do public participation and then we'll come back to the resolution. Okay.
Okay, let's open up public participation. If any of the members of the public wish to speak at this time, if you could state your name and the road you live on. Thank you.
Mike Hornick, Rocky Point Road. I chair the Firehouse Steering Committee. I just thought I'd be available if there was any questions that I might be able to answer. Any questions? No?
Let's, Mike, perhaps in the next session,
okay.
We'll call on you. Thank you.
Sherry Rourke, Rocky Point Road. I'm here to express support for allowing the fire hall feasibility study to proceed through its full process with all potential options explored thoroughly by the consultant and the steering committee. A feasibility study is meant to provide council with a complete picture, technical, financial, operational, so that any final decision is based on accurate and well-rounded information. It's important to remember that the feasibility study is just that. It's a process to gather data, to weigh alternatives, and to provide council with a strong, informed foundation for decision making. The consultants leading this process are seasoned professionals with extensive experience in complex municipal planning and infrastructure studies. They bring critical expertise and independence to this table. Our steering committee is equally well equipped, made up of individuals with diverse backgrounds, including project management, construction, engineering, government policy and planning, past and present fire service operations, emergency services, and our council liaisons for finance and public works. These are not arbitrary appointments. You chose them. Each person brings insight and capacity to assess options in the best interests of the community. The current point of discussion is the application to the Agricultural Land Commission. This step is not a commitment to proceed with building on that site. It is simply part of the due diligence process. Without exploring that option fully, council cannot fairly or accurately assess whether it is viable. Rejecting it prematurely will limit the study's ability to compare all options on an equal footing. I think it's also worth noting that all current municipal buildings in the village core including the municipal hall and the community center, are also located on ALR land with the appropriate ALC permissions. So whether staff determine this request should proceed as an exemption or a non-farm use application, this option for the new fire hall is entirely consistent with existing land uses, and it does not introduce a new or incompatible precedent. From a practical standpoint, relocating the fire hall may offer significant financial and logistical advantages as discussed tonight. It could reduce or eliminate the need for a costly, secure temporary facility, something that will be required if construction takes place on the existing site. Relocation will also maintain uninterrupted fire services throughout the build process. It may also delay or avoid immediate demolition of the current fire hall, offering another layer of cost savings. If this option could ultimately save taxpayers $1 million or more, it's absolutely worth exploring. I think there's also a legal and ethical dimension. The municipality is responsible for providing a safe and healthy working environment for its employees. It's already been established that the current fire hall and apparatus bay contain mold and that doesn't meet modern seismic safety standards, amongst other issues mentioned tonight, such as diesel exhaust, which is a known carcinogen. These are not minor concerns. The presence of mold presents health risks, and the seismic vulnerability of the structure puts emergency responders, essential apparatus and operational equipment, and the public at risk. The municipality has a clear duty to remediate these issues, whether through renovation, reconstruction, or relocation. I urge Council to let the feasibility process unfold as intended, to let the professionals in the committee do the work they were tasked with. I believe exploring all available opportunities ensures that when the time comes for a decision, it will be based on fulsome, thoughtful, and transparent information. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to speak at public participation?
Good evening, Brent Donaldson, Chalister Court. I'm a member of the Fire Advisory Committee, or pardon me, the Fire Hall Steering Committee. Just a side note, the meeting that we had in May, earlier this month, unfortunately, the updated ALR component wasn't available at the meeting when I made the recommendation regarding the ALC. And certainly it was brought up at our meeting in March for staff to investigate the option of using the lot next door. Certainly was my recollection that to actually move forward to build a new fire hall on that site, it was strictly to start the wheels moving to see if it was even possible. So unless I missed something, and I haven't seen the minutes from the meeting, it was more just an exploratory process. And again, those meant the feasibility study regarding the ALC option was sent to us later the next day because it was unreadable at our meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Gary Lamb, Hackmore Drive. 3 questions. Number 1, the JDA report that we saw, is that available to the public? Second question, if it is, where can it be accessed? Third question, if not, why not?
Okay, thank you. Anybody else wish to have a question?
Yeah, could we just check and answer Mr. Lamb's question? It seems to me it's going to be made available to the council. Will it be made available to the public?
Not sure. Deputy Corporate Officer Hanson, could you answer that question?
Through the chair, the reports that have been presented to the committee to this point have all been draft reports. We don't have anything other than a draft report at this time. Draft documents are not routinely releasable under FOIPA. So it's my understanding that the consultant will be finalizing the report and it'll be coming forward at the next committee of the whole meeting. And it will be available to the public at that time.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody else wish to speak this evening?
Mayor Little?
Yes, go ahead.
Sorry, just to clarify, the presentation that was presented this evening, that can go on the website and will be circulated to council.
Okay.
But the report that the committee has received has just been a draft document.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
And I guess we heard from the consultant tonight that he needs a series of decisions from council before he can finalize his report. So it may not be the next committee of the whole, it may be further away.
Okay. Anybody else wish to speak from the public? Okay, let's get back to the questions at hand. That was the page 21. That was the resolution that was asked. I was struck by what the consultant said about the human component of this, and I think to me our greatest asset is not the bay or the buildings itself. It's the people in the building and our professional firefighters. That is our greatest asset. We need to protect them not only in day-to-day work safe, but also with adequate decontamination sites, with adequate showering, with the exhaust that I didn't know anything about, and with increased circulation and ventilation in the building. So that was something new to me today, was the deficiencies with the decontamination and the showering, which is of grave concern. So this just lets be clear to the public and to all of council, we're not deciding anything tonight that will cement us into any preferred option. We're going to have lots of conversations at this table with the Fire Hall Steering Committee and with a consultant to move this forward in a very open way. So we're not rushing into anything. So regarding the question of the ALC, so the land adjacent to the fire hall is within the ALC, as well as this building, as well as our school site and the field next to the old school, as well as the Metchosin Community House and the cricket pitch. It's all within the ALC. The question to me is, potentially, are we ever going to use that land for agriculture? Are we ever going to use the school land? Maybe the school field, you've got the community garden there now, but may use the school field, but we're not going to use the imprint of where the school is for agriculture. So I think we're kidding ourselves by keeping that in the ALC. And I question council, are we ever going to use that component there for agriculture? Because that is the original intent of the Agricultural Land Commission, is to protect farming land. Not to protect green space, but to protect farming land. So let's have a conversation about what we have to discuss this evening. And then I would like to propose another meeting. And I think it would be a great meeting to have council and the fire hall, have a joint council fire hall steering committee meeting. Both of us, the chair of the fire hall steering committee, and I can chair that meeting, just to ask questions about our different options. What do we have in our finances? What do we have available? What do we really want there? And what are our main objectives? So I'd like to propose that as well. But first, let's deal with the ALC question. Councillor Shukin.
Thank you very much, Mayor Little. It was interesting to hear one of the committee members come up and speak. The key word that I remember was that in discussions at the steering committee, there was an interest in exploring the potential removal of this parcel. This land parcel from the ALR. The way the recommendation or the motion before us reads, it is a direct action to apply to the ALC to exclude. And in all honesty, I have some concerns with that. There may be a good rationale for excluding the this parcel, which includes cricket pitch, the horse paddocks, the house, and the field out there. And interestingly enough, I was reading my package in the midst of helping to park a bunch of cars on Sunday. So I'm with you that it's very unlikely that this is going to be used for agricultural purposes. Still, the ALR is an inherent part of the culture of Metchosin, and to move without much background on this recommendation, I find that a little jarring, and I think we need more background on this, and also to bring the public along with us, and if we decide that, it is a good thing. So, one final thing, I would be open to revising or amending the motion here to make it along the lines of exploring the potential of excluding for the purposes of a fire hall. So.
Okay, so hold on to your resolution for a moment, let other people speak, and then we'll come back to you. Thank you. Councillor Donaldson.
Yes, thank you, and I appreciate what Councillor Shukin has to say. It's along the same thinking that I have. However, what I'd like to say, you've identified that we temporarily use both our fields for parking, whatever, and that in the winter we don't with this one because we have a duck pond out there. However, getting back to the ALR and the purpose of having land in ALR is the possibility. It's a reserve. It's a reservation for future food production. And granted, we have other land in Metchosin, and this is one of the things, we talked about farm to fork and community gardens, and the agriculture committee goes over and over this about the uses of agricultural land in the commission and what those parameters are, and educating people of that. At the March 11th Fire Hall Steering Committee meeting, the resolution did come up that the committee recommend to the district staff to explore options around building on a lot adjacent to the existing fire hall. The background of that conversation was not to fast forward to what the resolution before us today on page 21 is, to total exclusion, but as a temporary while the fire hall is being built. There does need to be more conversations, obviously, as to what does that look like? Where are we going to put people so that they're safe, so that they can actually be able to be deployed out to an emergency situation? Where's our equipment going to be? There's all sorts of logistics. I'm not sure what Councillor Shukin's recommendation will be or amendment. I would support an amendment to explore what those options are for a temporary use of that field in the months that the field can actually be a temporary location for a facility that would support a time when we may build a building on the building envelope that we've already studied. So I would, the difference in word of excluding completely forever and ever, or exploring options that we could use temporarily, and keeping the ALR as it is. Granted, we may find ourselves going more into that, as maybe that building envelope will have to be a little bit bigger. We don't know. It's very, very premature, but not to close the door on any of these situations. We're here to support the fire department, whatever the future is going to be. As a community, it's not going to develop largely. We just had a report from our planner that in 20 years, 800 dwellings we expect to meet with the housing requirements that the province wants to do. So that's not a lot of developing. A lot of our calls are emergency medical type of calls, but we can't be short-sighted in that there could be other catastrophes as well. But to be mindful of costs in every aspect, but not to completely remove the land forever and ever out of ALR. I think that's something critical we need to consider. Temporary, absolutely. And if the ALC would allow for that, now's the time we're gonna have to ask about it because it takes almost a year to get that kind of permission. Let's see. Thank you.
Councillor Epp.
Well, I agree with the architect that that land is the best option, and to build a new fire hall in that space is the most economical option to be able to continue to use the existing hall while the new one is being built. And I agree that the wording should possibly be changed on this motion, because we do have deadlines as far as potential grants that we can get, but we need to move and we need to be able to make a decision. So at least if we know one way or the other whether we can actually use that piece of land for a fire hall or not, we just need to find out if that's possible. And if there are different options as far as taking land out of the ALR, maybe it's a farm use, a non-farm use, or it's has to be total exclusion or whatever, but we just need to know what the options are, so that then we can move ahead with a decision and applying for grants that are available for the building.
Thank you. Councillor Gray.
Unfortunately, I forgot to ask how the architect said this was a preferred option. It's hard for me to imagine a preferred option without understanding the cost of the different options. But it's a good point that Councillor Epp is making. For me, if the motion were to read to direct staff to inquire to the Agricultural Land Commission about excluding these things, that would be good to accommodate a new fire hall or temporary use. But I guess what I'm relieved of is that the proposal wasn't to put housing on the agricultural land. And that's good news to me tonight. It sounds like that's been put aside in this feasibility study. In other words, it won't be part of the fire hall development, at least as far as we get a report from on the feasibility side of things. Too costly, it sounds like. I'm struck that we're kind of making decisions, or the order of decision making seems unusual to me. I would have appreciated learning much earlier on about the seismic upgrade in question, so that we would then be set in a good position to look at the materials tonight, and then having the material before us before the meeting so we could read it. It was impossible to read the slides tonight. The printing was far too small. So having the information and the ideas that we could go through would be a big help as we move forward with this process. The other thing about speaking directly then to so first of all is the process, this preparation for tonight's meeting and the materials that we've received. Very informative, but a little bit confusing how we got here tonight. In the motion itself, we recently adopted an agricultural plan. The number one goal of that plan on page 23 is to protect Metchosin's agricultural land. That will be measured by the amount of ALR that's protected and preserved, and that there'll be no reductions of ALR in Metchosin. We knew about this idea of a fire hall, and we were very confused about the 4-acre spot and all that earlier in the RFP. So lots of us have talked about the use of that piece of property, and we knew about that, and we passed and adopted that plan. So I would like to see us, I'm okay exploring it, but making a decision tonight to actually request to apply to remove it from the ALR seems, I would say, poor decision making. I think we need a written public report explaining the reasons why we would do that, the pros and cons, and then we can make a judgment to, shall I say, violate the agricultural plan. Myself, I prefer the land being encumbered by the ALC, this big property, because once we remove it, we need a good rationale, basically, that's positive for the community and for agriculture before we make a move. The other thing I would like is a map showing that, because the motion itself is about 4450 Happy Valley Road, but the fire department itself is 4440 Happy Valley Road. Are there two pieces of property? It would just be good to have that shown to us. That would be included in a briefing note, maybe, that would lay out the questions here. But I'd like to see a map before we make the final decision on this.
Okay. Does anybody else? Councillor Schuh can go ahead.
I would like to make a motion,
Sure.
which would be an amendment to this, unless anyone else wants to.
Go ahead.
So it would be that council direct staff to explore the potential of excluding from the excluding or the provision for temporary use of the land in the ALR related to fire hall development on the parcel known as 4450 Happy Valley Road, legally described as Plan A, Section 2, Metchosin District, and the PID number. And then again, sorry, I'm being read on here from the ALR. So it's the potential of excluding or the provision for temporary use related to fire hall development. So that could be a temporary laydown, or it could be the siting of a building. So
moved.
So moved.
Do I have a seconder for that? Seconded by Councillor Epp. Discussion. Go ahead.
Yeah, again, sorry, just to repeat. It is a motion to explore, and with the possibility of a briefing note coming our way, and we can touch on some of the issues that we've discussed here. Councillor Gray has raised the idea of just getting a grip on the address as well, parcel number. And again, back to Councillor Donaldson's, the potential of a temporary use is well, I think, covered in the motion. So,
Councillor Wish, do you wish to, or Councillor, do you want to speak to that? No? Okay, anybody else?
Through the chair, could I ask the CAO, does this include the actual fire hall department, address 4440 Happy Valley Road?
Yes, it does.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, I would support this motion to go back to what we were discussing as a whole. I am more in line with what Councillor Epp was discussing and the points that she made that I think are very valid. Certainly we need more discussion about this, but this gives us a starting point for the staff to go back, talk with ALC, bring us back a report, and then work with the Fire Hall Steering Committee. Councillor Epp.
Sir, I just wondered if Mr. Hornick would have any comment on this.
I think the concept and motion, if we're talking about specifically that property, was to be able to move forward with the design and carry on with JDA to advance that. You know, not closing any doors on anything, but we're stuck with a few different decisions, which is, do we repurpose the apparatus bay? Do we renovate it to maintain its existing condition? Or do we build new, what we're calling next door, what I call next door, on that small parcel, and maintain the fire hall operations as they are now, and then just move into the new hall when it's built? That's the only decision, or that's the only option. If we build next door, that's the only option that doesn't require us doing temporary housing facility for all of that stuff. So if we didn't do that, we would still need to be able to set up a fairly sizable temporary setup on probably the next door lot. It's about the only thing that actually makes sense, but it's not a small or inexpensive task either. So, you know, going down the road of applying, I think that's how you request. You can talk to the LC, and I believe the CAO has already inquired about, you know, things like that, but it's a matter of application to either remove it or get a non-farming use permit or something to that effect. And either option, I think we need that. Even if it's a temporary laydown area, we would still probably need to seek some sort of permission, because there would have to be temporary hard surfacing. Maybe it's some fabric to protect the soils below, gravel tops, tents, portable buildings, generator, temporary powers. You know, all of that. When you consider it's a lot. So I think it's definitely a good idea to at least inquire or start the application. As far as I understand it, the applications can be lengthy as well. They could be up to 12 months. We could always retract that application if something came up in the meantime. So I don't think it commits us to anything. And personally, I wouldn't be for removing the whole site, as I understand it, it's one big parcel. I would be more inclined to say, you know, outline a parcel there and say, we want to do this here. I don't know if that means, you know, I don't know what that means, but I would try and isolate it and be low impact on it.
Okay.
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 Thanks.
Councillor Gray.
Just that's very helpful hearing from Mr. Hornick, and perhaps in the if we do pass the motion in the inquiry, the CAO can find out if we can exclude a very small portion of the entire property.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Thanks, Mr. Hornick.
Okay. Any other comments? Nope. I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed?
No,
Okay.
sorry, not.
Okay, that motion carries. Go ahead.
Mayor Little, one other matter has crept into mind around this discussion before us and the flow of information, and it's around project governance. So, and it's not even about project management. So we have council, the decision makers, we have the steering committee who are working through some of the issues. We have our staff as well. That, like, there are some complexities around all this, and I'm wondering if we're functioning at the optimal level with these pieces. And I say that because this is the first briefing that council's had for some time, and you know, I wonder if almost it's significant enough an issue that it almost should be a standing matter of, you know, once a month agenda possibly. The one, and again, this whole concept of the decision around the apparatus bay is such a significant one. How is that going to be made? What are the parameters around it? And but again, it comes with fiscal implications, etc. Very complicated. I don't want to dump anything more on Mr. Pyatt's plate, but I just wonder if there's a possibility of reviewing questions around project governance as we move along. This will be the most significant cost expenditure that Metchosin's ever faced. I will throw a counterpoint to Councillor Gray's comments about amalgamation, whether we can afford it or not, and maybe that leads to amalgamation. Well, I would say that if we can't manage this process and we end up with a derelict building that collapses because of a heavy snowfall, or we have a sustained health and safety issue because of the ventilation, that's the kind of thing that we will, that leads to deeper implications. So the onus is on us to manage it well. And it strikes me that, again, project governance is a critical question here.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Okay. Councillor Gray.
And I just want to agree with Councillor Shukin entirely. My point about the, you know, the cost is we need to at some point know what they are. But your point is equally valid, and I think that's what we heard tonight from the consultant and a little bit from our chair. The idea of getting clear where we're going and what we're doing, and actually some milestones would be very helpful for sitting at council. And I think in that, I'd also like to get clarity on the scope of what we've agreed with the consultant. We presented something, we approved it, and we're not doing what the document said. So it would just be good to know we're putting this aside, we're putting that aside, and we're focusing on. I'm happy with what I'm hearing in terms of the hard work that's gone in, but we're leaving a lot behind that we said was going to be part of our decisions. And I'm okay, perhaps, if that happens on some points, but not on other points. So clarity would be helpful.
So a decision that we've got later on was whether we were going to apply for a grant for the provincial government. You've seen it in the package. The project reconstruction of a fire hall fits in nicely with their infrastructure grants. I would really hate to miss the opportunity to get funding from that, which we could use that to match our funding to build something that is sustainable and within our means in Metchosin. But in order to do that, we need to move things along. It'll take a couple of months for the CAO and the CAFO to put together that application. So I'd like to see things moving along. And that's why I suggested maybe at this point, since we haven't heard a lot from the feasibility, the Fire Hall Feasibility Committee, how about if we have a joint meeting where we can discuss the studies that they've seen already, we haven't seen, so we can discuss those and then either give the Fire Hall Steering Committee direction, which way we want to go. I would just like to get this moving along. And that's why I'm suggesting a joint meeting that would, of course, be open to the public. Go ahead, Councillor Gray.
I'm open to that, but I would like documents beforehand with the questions laid out and a discussion guide.
Well, sure. It would come with a report from our staff, and all of the documents would be prepared and distributed in advance as usual.
That would be good.
Yeah. So, other councillor members, what do you think? Councillor Shukin and then Councillor Epp.
Did I say what a motion for that meeting, or
yeah,
we need one? Right, I'll move that we have a joint meeting with the council and the Fire Hall Steering Committee.
And that's moved by Councillor Epp, seconded by Councillor Donaldson. More discussion.
Well, I've come to realize that if a motion doesn't actually say different things, and sometimes it doesn't happen. So I'd like a briefing package for that meeting with the questions that were going to be asked.
Okay. Anybody else have any?
Is that acceptable
comments
to the group, or can we amend the motion to include that? Another meeting like tonight without any documents is really difficult.
Well, we'll have the documents that was afforded to the feasibility committee. We'll have a report from our staff.
So if that can go into actions in the minutes, that would be helpful.
Okay, Councillor Epp. Councillor Shukin, did you want to speak to the motion at all?
Yeah, I do agree with Councillor Gray that we need to make sure we have adequate documentation. The one thing that I wonder about is Mr. Craig was here, and I wonder if he could provide us with a preliminary report, given that some of it is, he can't move fully because he hasn't, had a decision from us in terms of the apparatus bay, but.
And for that meeting, we could also have him available for Teams. I think we would ask him to appear online. CAO Payette, would we be able to have the consultant for that meeting? And would we be able to have a report for staff on next steps that we need to do?
I believe we could have them on a Teams, if that's okay with council, and can have the feasibility study as it is now, I believe. And what else would council like as far as information?
What are you interested in that report, Councillor Gray?
Well, Mr. Craig said he needed a number of decisions from us. So what are the decisions that he needs? If he said there were a series of things that he needed us to discuss and decide on. Just an organized report that lays out, this is where we're at, these are the decisions that I need, or that he needs. We may be able to make some of them, maybe not make others, but just a sense of this and the signposts, the milestones.
Okay. Acceptable. Okay. So I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay. So let's move on this evening. And we are at 4A, page 5 of your council package. So we have adoption of the minutes for the council meeting, May 5th, 2025.
Move adoption.
Second.
Moved by Councillor App, seconded by Councillor Shukin. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. And we have receipt of the minutes on page 9 of the council agenda. This is the committee of the whole meeting, May 12th. Moved by Councillor Shukin, seconded by Donaldson, seconded by Councillor Shukin. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. And then we have the Fire Hall Steering Committee meeting Wednesday, May 14th.
Move receipt.
Move receipt by Councillor Epps, seconded by Councillor Shukin. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. And the mayor's report. I've had a written report the last meeting. I'll have a written report the next council meeting. One thing that I want to say, I want to welcome our new employee. Miss Thomasina Barnes has been hired. She started today. We want to give her a warm welcome for council. So welcome, Thomasina. She's from Fuca, highly regarded. Seems like an absolutely lovely person. I think she'll fit in well. Okay. Business arising on page 19. Council Donaldson, I believe he chaired that meeting. The Committee of the Whole recommendations, page 19.
The recommendation is that council invite Dr. Jennifer Tynan and Jochen Mower to make a presentation on the spongy moth spraying program, and that council consider bringing this issue to AVIC and UBCM.
This is moved by Councillor Donaldson, seconded by Councillor Shukin. Questions? All in favor? All in favor? Opposed? Oh, you do have a question. Okay. Councillor Epp.
Yeah, I just, I don't know anything about spongy moth spraying, the pros or the cons of the spraying, and to have in the motion that we consider bringing the issue to the ABICC and UBCM, I find that a little difficult when we haven't had any presentation on it yet, and so I can't make a decision on that when I really don't know. I mean, obviously they do spray for a purpose, so I'd like to know what that is, and then I'd like to know, what benefit it has, and then what's detrimental about it as well. I just think it's a little premature to have that added to the motion.
Mm-hmm. Councillor Gray.
So to consider doesn't mean that we'll do it. It means we'd hear the two proponents and then consider whether or not we should bring it forward. So hopefully the information we'll receive in a presentation will be enough to say yay or nay on the second part.
Councillor Epp.
Yeah, these two people, are they opposed to the spraying?
They are, yes.
Well, then are we going to have a speaker that is not opposed to it, like to tell us why they do it?
If you like, we could try and arrange someone from the provincial government to come as well.
It just seems, to make a decision, I'd like to have both sides.
There may be many sides to this, but we could certainly ask the province if they would like to bring, if they would be open to a presentation.
Would you like to amend the motion to include a provincial?
Yeah, I'll propose an amendment that we also invite a member of the provincial government to explain their decisions on the spongy moth spraying.
Yeah, that's first and seconded. Everybody else have any comments? Okay, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Go ahead. The District Metchosin Active Network Plan. Councillor Epp. Maybe Councillor Epp, could you go ahead with that motion on page 19?
I need the main motion on that one.
Yeah, we haven't called a question on the main motion. We just did the amendment, right? For the spongy moth?
But we just included that in the main motion. But we could certainly have another vote on the amended motion to invite Jennifer Tynan and Jochen Moore to make a presentation, as well as a provincial delegate on the spongy moth spraying program. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Go ahead, Councillor Epp. Thank you.
Okay, I'll move that council endorse the Metchosin Active Transportation Network Plan, and that council endorse option A, Village Centre improvements, as the identified priority active transportation network plan improvements for a BC Active Transportation Infrastructure Grant application.
This is moved by Councillor Epp, seconded by Councillor Donaldson.
Can we split that into two motions?
Sure. Let's take the first motion. That would be first by Councillor Epp, seconded by Councillor Donaldson. That's that we endorse the plan. Comments? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. And the second motion?
Okay, I'll move the council endorse option A, as I mentioned before.
Okay. This is moved by Councillor Epp, seconded by Councillor Shukin. Do you wish to motivate on that one?
I know, I believe, we had a discussion about this, and it seemed to make the most sense to begin with this option.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Councillor Shukin, did you want to motivate? No? Anybody else wish to? Councillor Gray.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask a couple of questions. One was out of the consultation that was done, the most popular project, almost 30% of the respondents were in favor of the Rocky Point roadside trail by Hans Helgeson School. And do I understand correctly now that we're not going to pursue a roadside trail at this time in that location due to cost and practicality?
Yes, that's what I understood. That was enormously expensive to build a roadside trail from Arden to Hans Helgeson School.
And
we were going to explore other options for a safe passage of kids active transporting themselves.
Yeah, and so I think the idea was perhaps to discuss with the landowners the path between Hans Helgeson and the Galloping Goose. And I just wanted to know who might take that on. Is it a staff job or a PTASK? Could it come in the PTASK work, or what would be the best thing to? Because it was a big, really important one for the community.
Yeah.
And I'm okay that we're doing something different.
I think it could be undertaken by PTASK in terms of bringing forward a plan or a concept to, consider actioning. So who has the discussion with the landowner might be another question, but I think PTASK can drive it forward. And in fact, that's one of the things that we can put into the Parks and Trails Master Plan as well as a desired route for safer passage.
Like a statutory right away.
Yeah.
To Vane.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Great. That's just to get those things clear. The second most popular project at 25% of the respondents was widening of the roadway or roadside trail on Metchosin Road. And with this motion, we're not going to do that. And I just wondered, I don't know, would anybody in council advise a friend or an acquaintance or family member to ride a bike down Metchosin Road at the moment? It's not a great ride. I was looking at a note from, I think it was Patty Williams, who wrote us back a ways saying the Royal Bay development, they're going to have the walking paths, the cycling paths come up to our border and then stop there with the parking lot. And we're not going to do anything about reducing traffic on Metchosin Road at this time. 7,000 homes and 23,000 people. Have there been any discussions with Mayor Kobayashi about the connections? No. Just worried. I got the sense, and maybe it's true or not, but when Mr. Casey explained it to us that the grants are drying up, the active transportation grants may not be available in future. So that would mean we'll leave this one to the next council.
Councillor Shukin.
The answer is probably yes. And the answer to the other question is, are we not pursuing it this time? The answer is yes. And what I had suggested, I think it would be really neat to widen the shoulders on Metchosin Road and allow for better cycling. It strikes me that's a very costly project. And I'm not sure it fully benefits Metchosin. And it would be interesting to see if there's a way of exploring cost sharing with the CRD potentially. So I think it's a fairly complicated question. And again, the thing that we put forward is this is the grant, the project we're moving ahead with a grant at this time, as in the Village Corps. Doesn't exclude anything else, but this is the one we're doing this time.
Councillor
this certainly means that we will never look into grants for Metchosin Road. This is a starting point with a lot of things that we would like to do. And even if the provincial grants programs are starting to dry up, there's others. There's a Canadian I'm not sure what that one's called, but it's also an active transportation. So there's that one, and there are other grants available too. So, you know, it's just, I think it's just something that we need to keep moving forward on, and to eventually make all the improvements that we discussed during the whole network plan process.
Sorry, one other thing to throw out there is, you know, the reason why we were interested in pursuing the Duke Road East Trail is because we were hearing from the neighbors on a sustained basis. If there's a cycling group out there who wants to approach us about the use of Metchosin Road, that would be helpful. So, but right now, I mean, it was brought forward in the survey, but I mean, I haven't heard anyone in this chamber advocate. Sorry, I may not a lot of people, especially given how popular it seemed to be. So if there's a cycling club out there who have an interest, we need to hear from them, and that'd be helpful in the future. So
maybe I'm just trying to get clear, and thank you for that. Those are good ways of thinking about it. I'm just anxious that we'll get, you know, our active transportation plan, and I spoke against the, you know, so many trails in it, but the three big ones, I think, were what the community, or the ones who participated, put forward. And so I'm thinking, well, if we can, I'm appreciating PTASC maybe can get a look at the Hans Helgeson connection. We'll agree tonight to do the Village Center Safety Project, it sounds like. And then can we do something in terms of moving forward with the Metchosin Road idea? I don't mean through this active transportation plan person at the moment, but is there a way to keep it alive? Would that fall under Public Works, or under, how would we look at it? PTASC, rather?
I think it would fall under PTASC, but if we were going to do bike paths on Metchosin Road, I'd like to see it done well, rather than just adding 2 feet of asphalt, which would provide a little bit of protection, but I still wouldn't let my child ride on that road. So I think it would require major infrastructure to make it a safe path, if that's what we really want it to be, a path from Royal Bay into the village of Metchosin. So we would need a path with some kind of demarcation between the traffic and the cyclists. That's not within our means right now. We don't have that funding. We have been told that the grants will be drying up, just like we've been told that other grants, like for infrastructure for the fire hall, for instance, will not be around next year or the year after. So we know that the grants are drying up, and I think the whole exercise was a great exercise. We've identified priorities, and we will do whatever is within our means at the time. And that information doesn't go away for the next council. That still is good information for PTASC and for councils to come. Councillor Epp.
You have to say that the Metchosin Road idea has not dropped off the face of the earth. I mean, it's still in our network plan, just as a lot of the other ones are, as being the areas where those are going to be the future focus points for infrastructure and for roadside trails and cycling lanes.
Yeah, I guess I'm still smarting a bit from the choosing the option had less than 10% of the respondents thought that the village center was the place to go, and a cost estimate from the consultant of $50,000 to $100,000 to do the Happy Valley Road intersection improvement. So it's not small potatoes either. But thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I'll call the question. All in favor? All those opposed? Opposed by Councillor Gray. Okay, thank you. Page 21 we've dealt with. That's the ALR land. Next we've got the Special Finance Committee recommendations from earlier this evening. So the motion was that council approve funding option 3 to fund every group that applied for the grant and aid. And yeah, that was the motion. Okay. So, Councillor Donaldson, this is from the Finance Committee. Could you put forward this motion? Sure. This is option 3. Oh, okay, sorry. Go ahead, Cal. Actually, you know what? I'll make it easy. I'll make the motion that council approve funding option 3 to fund every group to fund the 2025 grant and aid. Seconded by Council Donaldson or Shukin.
Okay.
Do you want to second it?
Okay, sure. Yep.
Okay, seconded by Council Shukin. Comments? Go ahead.
Well, I voted for this in committee, but you know, as I think about it, I really do think I appreciate we'll get the money to the groups, but I would prefer that we did otherwise in terms of following or using the scoring system that we set up and everything like that. So I'm going to vote against this one.
Okay. Anybody else wish to speak? I'll call the question on option 3. All in favor? Opposed? Opposed by Council Donaldson and Council Gray. Okay, reports for action. Moving along to page 23. This is a request for development variance permit 4430 Spellman Place. Councillor Shukin, could you walk us through just a brief summary?
Yes, I can. Thank you, Mayor Little. I just want to acknowledge that the applicants are here, Mr. and Mrs. Langille, and this is for a request for development variance permits related to a secondary suite that would occupy a new build on a vacant lot. The variance requested is for the setback from the secondary suite from the principal residence of 62.8 meters with the maximum the maximum setback in the zoning bylaw of 15 meters. All of the other requirements set out in our zoning bylaw for the detached secondary suite have been met. Setbacks from property lines, front, back, side, also the size of the building as well. So the rationale is to minimize land disturbance and utilize the existing flat surfaces on 2 rock outcrops. Constructing here to minimize blasting and tree clearing. And the lot is zoned upland. It's almost 10 acres, so detached suite is permitted here. So in our committee meeting, we voted on a site visit and we voted to inform the residents that this would be coming back to council at this time. And I guess I want to ask Ms. Hanson if she's heard from any of the neighbors in terms of objections. Haven't, no.
Through the chair. No, we have not heard anything.
Okay.
Thank you.
And the other thing that we did do a site visit, I'm forgetting the date now, but it was about a week and a half ago, hosted by Mr. and Mrs. Langille. They let us know that they have been in contact with the neighbors and they've had no objection as well. And so with that, I would move that we issue variance permit 2502. So moved.
Moved by Councillor Shukin, seconded by Councillor Donaldson. Anything else you wish to add? Councillor Shukin, Councillor Donaldson.
No, I just want to say that I really appreciate that this council is doing site visits, because when I looked at the map and then looking at all of the rules that we have on all sorts of land use bylaws and such, you know, it was almost like 200 feet away or 200%, I can't even remember what it was, but it was an extraordinary amount. But when you see it, you realize, I mean, you can see where it is. This was one of the things when that bylaw was made, that had to be 50 feet away, so you can see it. The front door had to face the principal residence. You can see this. And the landowners were very congenial in how to show us different things. They thought about it, you know, where the septic was going to go, how the turnaround was going to be with the driveway, the width of the driveway, a lot of thought and planning, and they've done their research. So they're right on top of this. It was great, but seeing it was really important for myself. Rather see it upfront and personal without just a bunch of paper. Mm-hmm. So it's so valuable for us to have that option. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Gray?
Just a question through the chair to the CAO. So the selected house site for the main house is on what I would call a sensitive area. It's a moss ball with rare plants. Is there any ability, Mr. Payette, to, within our zoning bylaws or otherwise, to alter the site of the main house.
Alter the site of the
To
main house
alter the
physically?
site, wouldn't that be up to the applicant, not the
physically,
CAO?
or what do
I
you-
believe so. I'm just checking to make sure.
I don't understand. Alter the site of the main house. Alter it in what way?
In other words, is there anything in our bylaws that would allow us, because of the environmental sensitivity of the site, to say, not there, you'll need to be in a different location? I know in the subdivision applications that can be done. I'm asking in this
Oh, I
application.
see. Okay, alter the site, the proposed site. The
Yes.
proposed site of the main house.
Yep.
Well, it's up to the applicant where they want to submit that location of the house. So could it be altered? They could reapply, I suppose.
But the district has no authority in this question.
Do we have authority on the location of the house? As long as it fits in the pocket of the zoning, it has to fit in the pocket based on the zoning parameters.
I'm not sure what the pocket is.
Well, setbacks, within the setbacks and all that.
Very good, thank you.
Councillor Epp.
So I'll just say then that with that response, which I think is that we don't have any authority, if I understood properly, I think the detached suite location is reasonable given the topography. And I would say that I'm going to speak in favor of the motion. I think that the applicants have chosen a good site for the secondary suite, and it meets the objective of the siting requirements in the bylaw in the sense that it's not a carriage house. And if that could be recorded in the minutes, that would be helpful because it is in the application. This is not a carriage house. It's a single driveway, and the proximity and the location mean that noise and disturbance to neighbors won't be an issue, and it meets all the other setbacks. So I'll be voting in favor.
Because I was taken aback too when I saw the 62.8 meters apart, but once you get there, I mean, it's a mountain, and really those are the only two places to build. So yeah, I'm definitely supporting this too.
Councillor Epp or Shukin, any other? No? Okay. No other comments. I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. That carries unanimous. Okay. Thank you to the applicants. We're moving along to the request for development permit at 546 Taylor Road on page 37. Oh, we have some people at the back of the room. Yes, you may leave if you you don't have to stay. You don't have to stay till the end of the meeting, but thank you. Thank you very much. Moving on to 546, Councillor Shukin.
Great. Thank you, Mayor Little. This is to authorize construction of a new home with a secondary suite, and that's to replace the home that burnt last year. Again, 546 Taylor Road. It is located in the Shoreland Slopes Development Permit area, and so requires a development permit as approved by council. And the land is also within the ag zone. The requirements of both the zoning for this area and the Shoreland Slopes DPA were laid out in the package here. I think it's on page 37. And our planner has indicated that it meets all of the zoning requirements. And I'll just quote from the report: all proposed construction, regrading, excavation, tree removal, and rainwater management systems will be located outside of the 60-meter setback from the natural shoreline area. And we talked about the Streamside Protection and Enhancement Act, which those setbacks are followed as well. I said this at our last meeting, that the proposal and the documentation, the reports all seem to be very thorough. And I want to thank Mr. Vogt, who showed us what's going to be a very exciting project for the landowners as well. So, not to mention Mr. Vogt. So, I would move that we issue development permit 2501 as stated in our package here.
This is moved by Councillor Shukin, seconded by Councillor Epp. Any of you wish to motivate further on that? No? No? Councillor Gray.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify that the new house is not planned for the same footprint as the previous house. So on page 73, you'll see a remark that it would be, but we've confirmed that with the builder, and just so that it's accurate, it could perhaps be noted in the minutes that the new house is planned, not the same footprint, but the foundation will be incorporated in the new house. So with that, seeing the engineering assessment, the staff review, and the content with the conditions, and the removal of the maple trees, which looks like it will be done readily and easily, and the trees will live, I'm going to vote in favor of this motion.
Councillor Donaldson, wish to speak?
Yeah, again, as I said with the other variants, I appreciate the opportunity of being able to see the site. And yes, I also noticed what Councillor Gray is saying there. It is not the garage and the alfresco dining structure will be on the original footprint with the new build right beside it joined up. And the reason I looked at that a little closer again, because it is on ALR land and how much land is being covered. But having seen it close up, I'm very empathetic to the owners who've been there only a year and a half and the house burnt down. So they're newcomers to our community. In meeting Mr. Vogt and walking through the different stages of what's taken place and what's going to take place, and reading the reports from the qualified environmental professional, I think that this is a thought out process, and I'm comfortable with supporting it for sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anybody else have any comments? No, if not, I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Great. Okay, next we have on page 81, we have a staff report. This is from our Chief Financial Officer. This is the UBCM Strategic Priorities Fund grant. This is the grant that I mentioned earlier this evening. CAO Payette, did you want to add anything to the Jeffrey or Mr. Creek's report?
Thanks, through the chair. Don't have much to add about the criteria of the grant. To meet the deadline, will, it's tight, so we want to have an opportunity for that grant. We need to get moving on the options analysis quickly.
Okay. Okay. Councillor Shukin.
I was talking about project governance previously, and again, getting moving, just as Mr. Payette is saying, is going to be really tricky with all the things Mr. Payette has got going. I am, well, yeah, I'm wondering if the thought does cross my mind as to whether we need, external support to keep the process moving along. And again, I don't know how that would actually look, because we do have, of course, the architect who's helping us with the design of the building. But there's a whole bunch of other elements as well, especially when it comes down to financing options, public engagement. There's a possibility of us borrowing money and referendum. So I'm not sure where that all fits, but it's nothing to be settled today. But we seem to be dumping a lot potentially on staff and then a steering committee as well. So just throw that out.
Although, yeah, I think we are expecting a lot from our CAO, but he has indicated that he would write the grant off the side of his desk in his spare time to meet the September 12th deadline.
Thank you. Just to reiterate, to get to the point where we can do costing, planning, and analysis and write the grant, we need to have an option to go with, and currently we have more options than we can count on both hands. So we need to whittle down the options quickly to the preferred options so we can follow through with the steps that the grant requires, which includes a Class D estimate of the option. And so this all takes time. We can possibly get it done if we could get a decision on the option, preferred option, by the end of June. So we'll press ahead as quickly as we can, but yeah, if we miss this grant opportunity, it's the fourth intake for this grant, so they don't usually go much past 3, so 4 is pretty nice. And after that, I don't believe there'll be much chance of another intake. So it would be nice to get a kick at the can at that grant opportunity to save that municipality a nice chunk of money in the future.
Okay, Councillor Gray.
I realize this report's for information, and I don't see a decision here tonight. But I do note that part of the requirements is that the district be responsible to support any cost overruns. So I think the really big question for us is some notion of cost of the different options, or some idea. Choosing between options is not exactly easy without some idea of the costs associated with each one. And then, as Councillor Shukin's pointing out, we get to the borrowing question. And then I'm not clear, but perhaps we could get a briefing from our CFO about how does it work going into debt? Do we have the money Sorry, maybe we have enough money in our reserves to do this. If not, how does it work going into debt? What's council's role? What's the public role? Does that require a referendum? I've heard those words, but I don't know the rules. And then the feasibility study was meant to look at all the different grants and what was coming, but it sounds like that's fallen off the agenda. So I'm looking forward to more discussion, but rushing it doesn't necessarily deliver us the best decisions.
Councillor Donaldson, then
Yeah.
Councillor.
So if we're needing to get this done by the end of June, and we've already canceled June 2nd meeting, postponed it to June 30th, I'm not sure how we're going to get the feasibility study, the detailed cost estimate, map and drawings and budget, and a resolution all done before the end of June for this. Or maybe we don't need to get it all done by then, but because we've got a September 12th deadline, but I don't know, that's a lot to ask of our staff in the next 3 or 4 weeks. Is that even attainable?
Councillor Abbott.
Well, maybe I misheard, but didn't he say that it was given the situation of the ground, which probably wouldn't be too bad here, that it'd be $550 or $600 a square foot. So to me, and I don't know, my math might be wrong, but I was multiplying that by 600 by 16,000 square feet, and it comes up to $9.6 million. So with the money that we already have in Metchosin, plus potentially getting the $7 million grant, that would cover the cost of the fire hall. And there are also other grants out there available, maybe as he mentioned, the one that's $1.5 million. So it seems to me that we, probably, unless something really unusual occurred, that if we pick an option, then and can get that class Class D, report on the cost of it, that it might be possible to work out.
Councillor Donaldson.
Yeah, and that's just the first of the money, because then we've got to think about a temporary setup. There's considerable amount of money involved with that, and then drawings, etc. I don't know if it all has to be done before the end of June, but it's a lot of work, and there's extra costs, and then public engagement is a key part too. So,
well, as Councillor Shukin says, that we may need to ask for extra help outside of our staff. I don't know how that would work, but it may be worth it if we could secure a $6 to $7 million grant for paying the cost of that person to help for the next little while. Yep, go
And
ahead.
just your comments when we started the meeting that there'd be plenty of opportunity for the public. The shorter the time frame, the less opportunities.
Okay, I'll take a motion to receive this report for information. Moved by Councilor Shukin, seconded by Councilor Donaldson. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. And then we have the Metchosin Building Inspection Department, as per usual, every month. This is the permit revenue year to date for 2025. Any comments on this? Looks like we're up a little bit in the current year to date. Hope that continues. Receive motion by Councilor Donaldson, seconded by Councilor Epp. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Then we have the District of Metchosin Public Communication Report statistics. Any comments on these? Take a motion to receive. Moved by Councilor Donaldson, seconded by Councilor Shukin. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. And we have correspondence for information on page 91. This is a letter from the city of Enderby, from Huck Galbraith, the mayor, regarding Bill 7, Economic Stabilization Tariff Response Act. And they've sent a letter to their MLA with a number of requests to make changes to Bill 7. Comments? Not, I'll take a motion to receive. Moved by Councilor Shukin, seconded by Councilor Epp. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. And on page 93, we have a letter from the RCMP. As per our agreement and practice in the past years, Assistant Commissioner John Brewer is asking for potentially additional resources and equipment for the G7 summit next month in Alberta, potentially deployment of some of our personnel per our MPUA agreement. So this is just to give us a heads up that that is coming up, and it is a significant event for our country, and they may need some of our resources on a temporary basis. Okay, Councillor Epp, moved by Councillor Epp, seconded by Councillor Shukin to receive the report. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. And then we have a letter from the program officer for UBCM notifying us that we have received $24,900 for long-term the long-term asset management plan, for a total of just under 50,000. Okay, so that's good news. Motion to receive. Councilor Donaldson, seconded by Councilor Shukin. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. We have no bylaws, no other business. We do have time for, oh no, we don't. It's after 9:30. With that, I'll take a motion to adjourn. Moved by Councilor Gray, seconded by Councilor Epp. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you.